Okay, we're being live streamed.
Okay.
Okay, hey,
We're now live.
hey, we're live on YouTube, folks.
Give me 2 shakes and I'll get the presentation going.
All right. You also make sure captioning is on. Thank you. Bear with us just for a moment. Thank you for your patience. All right. Good. Confirm that we're live on YouTube. Yeah. All right, so, good morning to everyone who's here in the room. Good morning or afternoon or evening if you're joining us on YouTube. We're going to kick off this morning with a regional mapping community meeting with some updates for the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, and from the IHO DCDB, and then some panel conversations. So I'm Vicki Farini, for those who don't know me, and I'll give a brief update about CBIT 2030 and then pass it over to some other members of my team to give some updates on the status of mapping in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. If you can go to the next slide, please. So we're coming to you live today from the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which is part of the Columbia Climate School. So again, welcome to everyone who's joining us. There is a puppy in the room. You may hear him on occasion.
Do you want to click the got it? But
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Jen. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to point out that we had people from 22 countries sign up to join this today. So hopefully everyone's there. If they're not there live right now on YouTube, they can watch it later and hopefully share this link with other people to give them the updates. For people who are on YouTube, feel free to use the chat or the comments in YouTube to communicate with us during this morning's session. Next slide. Just a brief point about various projects that are underway here at Lamont that contribute to CBIT 2030. I like to present these as part of the data acquisition or data stewardship continuum. The Multi-Beam Advisory Committee is co-led by myself and my colleague Paula Johnson and Kevin Jerem, also up at the University of New Hampshire. That project is focused on ensuring that the multi-beam systems in the U.S. academic research fleet are operated consistently and acquire high-quality data routinely. That project has been around for quite a while. We make lots of information publicly available, best practices to help generally with folks that are running multi-beam systems. The Rolling Deck to Repository program focuses on preserving the data that is acquired on the U.S. academic research fleet. And so in particular, multi-beam data is passed through R2R, it's documented, and it makes its way into the NOAA archive, which serves as the IHO Data Center for Digital Bathymetry. So that data all becomes publicly available. Process data that is generated by the U.S. community is preserved and documented through the Marine Geoscience Data System, also based here at Lamont. And we also have the Global Multi-Resolution Topography Synthesis that curates, integrates data, and passes it into CBIT 2030 and the GEPCO grid. So many of these projects, all of these projects help to support CBIT 2030 and GEPCO, as well as the U.S. academic community. All funded by the National Science Foundation. Next slide, please. All right, so the goals of today's meeting are, as I said, to provide some updates about where we're at with the project, CBIT 2030 project, give you some updates on status of mapping in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, and we're also going to have an update from the IHO Data Center for Digital Bathymetry. Then we'll have a very short break and move on to a couple of panel discussions, really focusing on connecting the ocean mapping community across the region that we are focused on. And then the final session of the morning is going to focus on capacity building opportunities, how we can distribute tools and workflows and really empower our global community to work together to acquire, process, and integrate data. Next slide, please. So briefly, just for context, hopefully everyone knows this at this point, but what is CBIT 2030? Of course, the Nippon Foundation JEDCO Sea by 2030 project is a collaborative project to inspire the complete mapping of the world's ocean by 2030 and to compile all of the available data into the JEDCO Ocean Map. The project aspires to empower the world to make policy decisions and to use the oceans sustainably, to undertake scientific research that's informed by a detailed understanding of the global ocean floor. Next slide, please. As you hopefully also know, the project is utilizing a regional approach. There are 4 regions that the global ocean has been divided into. Each of the regional centers is meant to engage with stakeholders, which is part of our intent this morning, to build on and leverage existing efforts, not reinvent, not redo work, assemble regional products that feed into the global grid, and also help to identify gaps in data coverage so that we can use the resources that are available to fill those gaps in the most efficient way. All of the products from the regional centers go into the global center, which builds the global products and makes those publicly available. Next slide. The Atlantic and Indian Ocean region is quite large. It covers roughly 39% of the global ocean. 38% of the region falls within exclusive economic zones. And there are 117 countries on 6 continents that bound the region. So we have a very large community spanning many, many time zones, which makes it challenging to try to get everyone in our region together in a meeting. So we're trying to use virtual engagement as part of our strategy to get the message out and get people communicating with one another. Next slide. A shout out to the team. Many of us are here in the room today. Some folks are online virtually, but really this is a big team effort and it's a real pleasure to work with everyone to try to get these ambitious goals accomplished. We have expertise from scientific expertise to applications development to data management that we bring together for this project. Next slide. The strategy that we are pursuing for the Atlantic and Indian Oceans is really focused on empowering our community. We want to understand the needs and the obstacles that our community faces. We're really focused on sharing tools and knowledge. We make effort to develop custom interfaces like the one shown in this slide, which we built for the Mesoamerican and Caribbean Hydrographic Commission. This particular interface highlights existing coverage, both publicly available and embargoed, in addition to the actual coverage of what's in the JEDCO grid to make it a little bit easier to understand where the gaps are. And we are also very committed to supporting all contributors and the contributions that they're able to make. So anything that can be provided, we make every effort to work with and integrate to build the best quality product that we can. Next slide. I do keep a very close eye on the progress being made in the different regional hydrographic commissions. There are many hydrographic commissions that fall within or intersect our area. And so the green shown in the map here is the extent of our Atlantic and Indian Oceans region, and you can see many hydrographic commissions there. The plot on the bottom, which I know you can't read, is just meant to show how many of the commissions are really accelerating in terms of the coverage in those regions. Next slide. Just, of course, a big thank you to all of our data contributors. We cannot achieve our goals without everyone's support and efforts, from people who acquire data to people who process data and people who work tirelessly to help make that data available. At present, we have data from over 40 nations integrated just within the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, more than 160 organizations and countless individuals. And really everyone's effort is what makes this all possible. Next slide, please. This is just, I was trying to think of ways to try to show the acceleration. This is a plot just showing the number of organizations that have contributed data directly. This is not all the organizations for whom data has been contributed because some people aggregate it and send it to us, but we are gaining momentum and getting more groups involved, more people contributing directly, which is all very important to meet our goals. Next slide. So this is what I like to call the unmapped ocean, where we use a black overlay to highlight the areas that are not mapped, and the blues are areas that are considered mapped with direct observation. This is the latest, greatest coverage, which is a pretty big improvement over where we started, and I think some of the next slides will highlight that. It was announced just a couple weeks ago that we are currently globally at 24.9% mapped. And of course, that's based on what's in the JEDCO grid and the data that meets our resolution goals, which are depth dependent. But we know there's more data out there, more data that we have not yet integrated that is available, more data that is not yet available that we're hoping to gain access to. And of course, more data is being acquired all the time. Next slide. So I'm going to hand it over now to Haley Drennan, who will give us an update on the Atlantic Ocean.
Thanks, Vicki. I'm Haley, and I have worked at Lamont since 2018, no worries, which is when I joined the team as a summer student hire with a background in seafloor data processing from the BEAMS program, or the benthic acoustic mapping and
Sorry, it's not actually going to announce it. I won't read it.
Oh, no. She's okay.
I think she's okay.
She's good. Okay. Yeah, but I'm part of I come from the seafloor data processing background with the benthic acoustic and mapping and surveying program at the Home Institution of College Charleston. Upon graduation, I joined the team in 2020 as a data manager here. My primary responsibilities include working with the data from the Atlantic, and this includes quality assurance and integration, as well as attribution documentation. So as a companion to the regional bathymetry grid that we construct for CBED 2030, we also create a grid which identifies which portions of the map are supported by direct observation versus prediction or interpolation. This is known as a type identifier grid, or a TID grid. This image is of the Atlantic Ocean for our 2023 release. The polygons in color, i.e. pink and blue, indicate different types of direct observations. The most visible here are the multi-beam. The multi-beam is in blue. The single beam, which you can kind of barely see really, they're in green. And the combination of direct measurements are in pink. The translucent grays indicate portions of the map where we were provided interpolated data. And of course, the black portions of the map as visualized, the visualization that Vicki showed indicate areas where the shape of the seafloor are based on predicted bathymetry. So in a close-up near the Mesoamerican and Caribbean region, you'll see that we have been able to distinguish in detail the portions of the map which were based on observation versus interpolation. So you can see some of the grays here are interpolated. We have a large grid which was contributed to us by TCARTA, and that is satellite direct bathymetry, and then of course our multi-beam and direct combination of direct measurements. Having these type identifier grids allows us to more accurately visualize and identify gaps in data coverage. Next, I'm going to step through the images that showcase the increase in coverage for the Atlantic and Indian Ocean, or Atlantic Ocean. So as in the previous images, the black areas indicate unmapped portions of the ocean. You'll note that as I step through some of these, that the areas characterized as mapped are recharacterized as unmapped briefly while we work through data contributors with data contributors to gather necessary information about what is mapped and unmapped in the region. So 2014 is when we started. And then you can see in 2019, reflecting our first release, this initial effort, we were still refining our process of identifying what data would be considered measured or direct versus interpolated. In 2020, you will see we redefined the definition in the Northern Atlantic, while the Southern Atlantic saw a large DEM contribution, but we were unable to define what was direct and indirect, which is why it's black within here. And then in 2021, not only did we add new coverage, but we were able to improve the characterization of unmapped and mapped. You can see this finally highlighted around Brazil. And in 2022, large increase in coverage, much in part to our stakeholders and colleagues who work to provide us with higher precision type identifying grids. And note that since this has been constructed, we had received more extensive data, which you will see in the next slide. The Portuguese Hydrographic Office Data Center was able to contribute something, huge grid with their CMAP 2030 project. And the Southern African Islands and Hydrographic Commission also gave us a large grid down here. And then you see this highlighted a little bit more, and here you'll see this is 2022, and these two regions are going to pop between back and forth. You'll notice the Portuguese data sets accounted for 55% of their national maritime space, and it was a large contribution. And you can see TCARTA and some UKHO data popping into the Mesoamerican and Caribbean seas. There we go. Yeah, these were some of our biggest highlights, and we're really excited to see more in the next release. I'll pass it to Tina.
Okay, my turn. I'm Tina Martin. I'm from Madagascar. I'm a marine biologist turned into a seafloor mapper. I am also an alumni from the training at the Nippon Foundation Chipko training at UNH. I joined in 2016. Following that training, I did an internship here at Lamont on data processing, and that was my first time being acquainted to data processing, bathymetry data, and creating grids following on my training. And then I joined 2019 as a data manager for the Atlantic and Indian Ocean Regional Data Center. As Haley, I will be navigating you through our progress in the Indian Ocean. Next slide, please. So as you know, every year we provide the DEM for the JEPCO, which is our regional product, and it is accompanied by the TID grid or the type identifier grid. As you can see on the screen, this is our most recent coverage. You can see the blue, which is preponderant, which is multi-beam data, and then we have less and less coverage on interpolated or predictive bathymetry. So again, the colored area are indicating direct measurements, while you barely can see, but there are some places around Australia that are gray or translucent, that these are the areas with interpolated data. Next slide, please. So as I said, I will be navigating you through our progress. So this is before the launch of CEDA 2030 in 2014. So as you can see, we have more predicted or interpolated around the coastal areas and less data around the Indian Ocean. We know that the Indian Ocean is vast and very huge. So right now you can see black is what we need to cover in terms of data. In 2019, when we started our first release, we had data contributed, we started to receive data from our partners and contributors, and more of the coastal areas were covered. In other places, we still have predictive bathymetry, and this is as we were working on our workflow, trying to understand what is actually mapped and what is predicted. And then in 2020, the progress is still there. I mean, we worked hard and we were more successful in acquiring more, not acquiring, but receiving contribution. So we were able to define what was mapped and what was not actually supported by direct measurement. If you look in the area around Australia, you can see that what we thought, or not thought, but what we characterized as predicted, we were able to actually define where in this area we have multi-beam or we have LiDAR data. And then in 2021, we still have, we were progressing more and more in our workflow, working with our contributor to acquire better metadata. And 2022, you probably noticed that we have less and less interpolated, and we have more blue than black. This is thanks for the very appreciable effort and contribution from our partners, because we can't do that without, being working with you and having you supporting us, working with you, all we make it happen. So in 2022, you can see that the coverage has increased, and next to 2023, here we are. We are very thankful for all these contributions, and you can see this area around the beaches are more covered thanks to contribution from IFPROMER. We can also, it's not really visible, but we have more and more satellite direct bathymetry. So we really wish to see more of that, to have the Indian Ocean more covered by the end of the project, and why not, people more contributing more and keeping the momentum going. So yeah, that was the update for the Indian Ocean, and back to Vicky, I guess.
So I think that's just a brief tour of where we're at with what's been happening in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. I think we're going to pass over, unless there's any questions from people in the room, but also recognizing we started a bit late, pass over to Christy to give us an update from the IHO DCDB. Stop sharing. It's all yours. Thank you.
And we're only doing the DCDB. I'll pause on the crowdsourced bathymetry for later, correct?
You can roll right
through?
Yep.
Perfect. There we are. All right, well, thank you very much. My name is Christy Reiser, and I'm a bathymetry data manager at the IHO Data Center for Digital Bathymetry, henceforth known as the DCDB. So today I'm going to go over a few topics related to the DCDB, and also I'm going to talk about crowdsourced bathymetry initiative. I did present on much of this last year, so I'm going to try to just give a brief overview and then also just focus on the highlights. So starting with the DCDB, I'm going to give a review and talk about the data holdings and contributions, recent and upcoming enhancements of our viewers. And then I'm going to pivot over to the crowdsourced bathymetry initiative, starting with the value of the data, and give an overview of our pipeline development, and then also touch on how to access data. And finally, we're also going to step through an overview on some of the current data contributors. So the IHO DCDB is the recognized IHO repository for all ocean bathymetric data. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, has hosted the DCDB since 1990. Data that are sent to the DCDB are also archived and shared freely and without restriction to the public. Now, in recent news, very recent this month, we have a picture here to share. A memorandum of understanding was signed to reaffirm NOAA's relationship with the IHO as the host of the IHO DCDB. And here you can see the IHO Secretary General and Rear Admiral of NOAA making that connection of the MOU. So that was very big news just a couple weeks ago. I also want to highlight that our role in Seabed 2030 is a little bit different than the regional mapping centers. The IHO DCDB is not a mapping center, is not one of these here, but we are recognized as the international repository. So you can actually see more about that here on the Seabed 2030 page. So here's the same image again. We tend to share the same information, but I just wanted to kind of show in the perspective of the DCDB, data archived at the DCDB are routinely used for the production of improved and more comprehensive bathymetric maps and grids in support of regional and global mapping projects. And so here you can see that comparison of the 6% of the world mapped versus this recent 24.9%. So that's really exciting to see that kind of growth. And we can compare that number to the DCDB data holdings, which the estimated global seafloor coverage is currently calculated to be about 12%. So this equates to about 66 terabytes of uncompressed bathymetric data, including over 3,800 multi-beam bathymetry surveys spanning 43 years, contributed by 58 different data sources, which you can all see here in the green track lines on the data viewer. So here you can see our new data holdings in this area since 2022, since last year. The biggest contribution that we've received in the past year is from the NOAA fleet, and then also from Caladan from Pressure Drop. So a lot of new surveys in the archive. Crowdsourced bathymetry data contributions also continue to increase and flows into the DCDB on a daily basis. And I'm going to speak a lot more to that in a little bit. So our data viewers not only show the global coverage of the DCDB's bathymetric data holdings, but also the spatial extent of other repositories across the globe. And we do this by connecting to their web services. So we're excited to see the number of web services continue to grow. And you can see on the left side of the screen, the red box shows the different countries and different web services that we connect to. So one example is the web services from Portugal's CMAP CIBA 2030 project. So we've been really excited to have that as an addition to our data viewer as well. I also want to highlight one other feature that we have on the DCDB data viewer is this tool called Grid Extract. It's just a wonderful tool that utilizes the multi-beam mosaic, where you can actually extract a piece of that. So here in this little red box down here, you can draw a little box using this Grid Extract tool, and then you can download the data and it generates a geotiff image right to your computer. So if you are in the need of something quick and easy, that just shows where we have data in the viewer already, does not require you to download and grid the data yourself. So that's been a wonderful addition to our viewer. We've also recently added the option to display undersea feature names from the JEBCO subcommittee on undersea feature names, SCEPN, as a background layer. And also recently, our fabulous GIS team has updated the DCDB viewer to include the Regional Hydrographic Commission boundaries as a background layer as well. So there's a lot more work on deck for next year, or this year and next year. But we plan to finalize our migration of our very outdated and inflexible database that we currently use into a new schema that will better enable us to have the ability for versioning of process swath files, discovery of backscatter and ancillary files, and also indicate polygons of extent coverage. We also plan to work on AutoGrid. The current version of this web application, which has actually been around for a very long time, creates user-specified grids from the flat files in our archive. And we're also building a new AutoGrid, the AutoGrid 2.0. And this is going to be running in the cloud. And we're hoping to include both multi-beam and crowdsourced bathymetry data points. And then down the road, we're also hoping to include single beam and possibly LiDAR data. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I want to speak briefly to how to contribute data to the DCDB. The IHO strongly encourages member states and other organizations to contribute their bathymetric data to the DCDB. We work with providers to ensure that their data is in the best format for public use, that their metadata is descriptive and informative, and to determine the best way to get those data to the data center. So here you can see on the IHO site, I've highlighted the submitting marine geophysical data to the IHO DCDB link. And this will actually bring you to a document that describes our recommended procedures for preparing bathymetry data and other marine geophysical data as well for submission, including guidelines on data formats, metadata information, and directory structure. We also have a data packager tool called CruisePack, and I'm going to actually do a short presentation on CruisePack a little bit later, so I'm not going to go into all the details for that, but we do try to offer many different tools to our data providers to make it a little bit easier for data submission. And of course, we also have another resource, and that is us, your friendly data managers. So of course, we're here to help answer questions, to assist in documenting your data, to do whatever we can to get your valuable data into the archive and available to the public. So here I just have a list of resources. So when we make the slides available, they are all in one place, much easier to grab. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any. And you're also always welcome to reach out to me via email. All right.
Christina, what's the difference between the grid extract and AutoGrid?
The grid extract and AutoGrid are really similar tools. In fact, I think a lot of it the grid extract tool was kind of built using the AutoGrid information, the code.
You want me to take that?
Yeah.
The grid extracts grids from already gridded bathymetry.
Right.
So you use grid extract on our multi-beam mosaic, on the NCI created eTopo, or on our DEMs, regional DEMs. AutoGrid creates a grid based on the flat files.
Okay.
So what we're hoping there right now, it's just on the multi-beam data.
Yep.
And what we're hoping is to add in and of course you can do it in the CSV, but that's a separate file, or a separate system. Hoping to combine those two, also end up adding our LiDAR, also end up adding our single view track line raw data.
With the updates with AutoGrid, will there be easier ways to automatically pull down like high resolution sections? Because I always hit the limitation where you're getting too big in an area, and I like Vicky is set up where it will do the auto URL for you at least.
So that I don't know. Yeah, that's my short, I'll just, I don't know, but it's something we'll certainly keep in mind as we're progressing. I mean, the way for AutoGrid 2.0 to work is we need to first be able to have all the flat files in the cloud. And that's what we're building right now, is that process. So like Christie's new multi-beam pipeline is set up to do that. We just need to finish the back-end infrastructure. So we'll have everything in the cloud and then be able to apply for
And then work on this whole session.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but we do recognize that that's a big pain in the butt right now. Did I answer everything?
Yeah, it is hard when you're limited by the file size that or the extent, that you're allowed to
Yeah.
choose.
I understand it. It's just
Um,
to sit there and manually do that.
Yeah, and then
Yes.
also like, well, I've already gotten a little bit of this, and then, it's hard to like stitch them together, down lots of them, so. Yeah, we definitely recognize that, and we'll bring that to our GIS team to make sure that they're aware that these are, the community's needs. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Well, I mean.
Yes, there are questions.
All right. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and move on to talk about the IHO crowdsourced bathymetry initiative, which is what we call CSB data. So first off, what is CSB? Well, it's defined as the collection and sharing of depth measurements from vessels using standard navigation instruments while engaged in routine maritime operations. This is very specifically worded and chosen definition. So what is the value of these data? Like most citizen science and crowdsourcing initiatives, part of the value of the data is that it comes at little or no cost at all. While this data is oftentimes nowhere near the quality or accuracy of professionally collected data, it can still fill the gaps where data are scarce. It's incredibly useful along coastlines where survey vessels may not visit often, but maybe fishermen or the fishing industry might frequent daily. And while the data may not go into a nautical chart, it can and has been used in aiding to the identification of uncharted features and assisting in verifying charted information, but really only if vessels collect and donate their data while they're on passage. So that's the important part. So recognizing the value of crowdsourced bathymetry data, the IHO stood up a dedicated working group. This group has met 13 times to date, including a industry workshop day. Most recently, they met in January in Boulder, Colorado, where we hosted them at NOAA. And this meeting consisted of 30 observers and or expert contributors from 23 different organizations. And they also have an upcoming meeting in Norway in August. So this working group is by far the best way to learn about crowdsourced bathymetry. The long list of active expert contributors, which may include representatives from hardware and software companies, as well as scientists just eager to collect and use these data. Couple that with hydrographic offices and representatives from those offices, it really does make for a diverse conversation to learn more about this technology and the ongoing projects. So we're always trying to encourage people to join or to reach out if you have any questions. At the very least, please join the meeting because it's a lot to learn. So the working group, the crowdsourced bathymetry working group, was tasked with developing a guidance document for crowdsourced bathymetry. And this document is commonly referred to as the B12 document. It states the IHO's policy towards and best practices for the collection and contribution of crowdsourced bathymetry data. Chapters cover a wide range of topics from data collection to contribution to data and metadata, and then as well as quality assessment. The original document was published in 2019, but in October of 2022, an update was incorporated feedback from different lessons learned and experiences from the community. The crowdsourced bathymetry working group also created a series of tailored 2-page outreach materials that were targeted to various sectors. You can see on the right side of the screen here, those are the different sectors. And this was an aim to help address challenges in perception. So ranging from how crowdsourced bathymetry fits within a company's business model, or even to worrying about sharing the location of vessels being tracked or shared. So the link to these materials is also located here, and I'll include that towards the end as well, the last slide. So alongside the efforts of the working group, the NOAA NCEI hosted Data Center for Digital Bathymetry, DCDB, has set up a pipeline for crowdsourced bathymetry data to be contributed and made discoverable and accessible. So the DCDB accepts crowdsourced bathymetry contributions to what we refer to as a network of trusted nodes. These are organizations or companies or universities, and they can fill a number of roles. But the central concept is that they serve as a data liaison between the mariner who collects the data and the DCDB itself. So they're responsible for data transfer to the DCDB. And in some cases, they can also supply data logger equipment, provide technical support to different vessels, and also possibly download data from the loggers themselves. So prior to submission, we always work with the trusted nodes to ensure that the data and metadata are in agreement with that B12 document we just discussed. So the CSV data must be provided in either CSV or GeoJSON format and capture the minimum requirement information. So that's an XYZ timestamp. Now, we do always encourage that, and as many of the metadata fields are filled out as many as possible are filled out. And then once the preliminary testing and data checks are complete, the trusted nodes submit CSV files in that standard format. And then an identifying token is issued to them so that they can communicate between the DCDB. So once data reaches NCEI, the public data are made available and discoverable via our BAPI viewer, the DCDB viewer. And here you can get a quick glimpse of what that looks like. And you can use this filter right here on the left side of the screen to filter out crowdsourced fifth imagery data. And numerous filters, including ship name, trusted node, and date added to the database, can be used to refine your searches within the data viewer to search for data you may want to use and download. So once you're happy with your selection, the flat files can be directly downloaded from the DCDB. Now, we also recently updated our systems to leverage a cloud-hosted point store. We now have a pilot project running that allows the user to generate bathymetric grids of a given area using a resolution of their choice. So this is in addition to the traditional flat file extraction. Currently, this is just a pilot project, but it's much more useful to the community to be able to have a grid that comes out of it. So I want to note that on the last few slides, I specifically called out public data. Not all crowdsourced fifth imagery data is made publicly discoverable and accessible. So the IHO requested that coastal states indicate their position on the public sharing of crowdsourced fifth imagery data collected within their waters of jurisdiction. So to date, we've had 33 coastal states, which are highlighted in green here, have replied positively that they're willing to share their data publicly. Now, in response to feedback provided by the IHO, the DCDB implemented and continues to update a geographic filter for incoming data to take into account those coastal countries' positions on the distribution of crowdsourced fifth imagery that's collected in their areas of jurisdiction. So here you can see this filter in place. The track line in green is the publicly accessible data that's available via our map viewers. The lines in red are not, they're not discoverable or accessible. And I want to note that this map is just for illustration purposes. This is not a view that's ever publicly visible. So to the public, this is what they can see in this region versus these data. So stepping back and looking at a global scale, there's an additional 3 gigabytes of filtered data based on the responses to the IHO's circular letter asking about those member states, the coastal states' position. And so I want to note that this particular image isn't 100% up to date. We've had a couple of new responses from Papua New Guinea and Australia, but you can really see how much is being filtered out on a global scale. Now, recognizing that a coastal state's response may not always be a straightforward yes or no, we want to share the data or not. There may be conditional responses. So the DCDB is now working to develop a pre-approval capability. So this isn't quite operational yet, but this system would automate the notification and approval process of data for coastal states who have provided a positive response, but request pre-approval before public distribution. So despite the complexity of the geographic filtering, and we are still very excited about the progress of the Crowdsourced Fifth Imagery Initiative in recent years. So this image right here is our data holdings for Crowdsourced Fifth Imagery in 2019. We had one trusted node, which was the Rose Point navigation system. It was the first company we worked with to collaborate on contributing crowdsourced fifth imagery data. This company played a big role in really establishing our pipeline. It's a popular navigation software company in North America, so the data holdings we were initially seeing were really localized to the US and Canada. But today we have 10 trusted nodes who are contributing publicly accessible data. We have over 900 million data points, equating to about 25 gigabytes of data. And over 250 vessels are publicly accessible. So this growth is really remarkable. It's very exciting to see the success of this program highlighted here. So I really want to highlight some of the trusted nodes because they're the ones doing all the work. So I talked a lot about many of these last year. So I just wanted to give a list. These are the many different trusted nodes we work with, they cover a wide range of sectors. And so I really kind of want to just focus on the newer ones that are specifically providers for data in the region of this group. So I'm going to start here with the electronic charting system industry. These trusted nodes allow mariners to enable their electronic charting systems to log files to record depth and position and time. So our newest trusted node I'm excited to share is Aquamap. We've already started receiving nearly daily contributions, particularly along the eastern seaboard of the US. And then we're also working with hardware companies. So Orange Force Marine utilizes their Muscle CSV kits is what they call them. And it's a cloud-based data pipeline contributing crowdsourced bathymetry data. And of course, we have to highlight CEBA 2030. The IHO Crowdsourced Bathymetry Initiative is working directly with CEBA 2030. And this is not only to accelerate crowdsourced bathymetry activity around the world, but also to serve as a trusted node and helping in the setup of data collection and the assembly of data. So their objective is to encourage the collection of data in data scarce areas, to grow excitement about the initiative itself. And they have dedicated funding that's used for the provision of data loggers and installation support. So in return, a potential program must guarantee that the provision of staff are available to hand out data loggers to the community, assist local mariners in setup, and then also provide a copy of the data to the DCDB for contribution to the CEBA 2030 and the JETCO grid. And here you can see the CEBA 2030 funded programs. We're working with Greenland, South Africa, Palau, and New Zealand. Now that's a lot of information, but I want to circle back to why all of this matters in the broader context of seafloor mapping today. We love to highlight this quote from our colleague, Tim Thornton at Team Serve. If we got 1% of all seagoing vessels logging data, and on an average, they spend half their time at sea, then that's about 5 billion data points per day, which would make a big difference in our mapping goals. And with that, again, I've provided some resources here, and I'm happy to take any other questions.
All right, thank you, Christy. I think we're gonna take a bit of a coffee break, and then we will resume, I think it's 5 past the hour, with a panel discussion. So we can just mute ourselves and leave that on.
Right, we're back, and, thank you for joining us again for the next part of the regional meeting. The next section would be a panelist, and we would be addressing regional perspective on capacity development. Again, my name is Tina Martin. I am the data manager in charge of the Indian Oceans at the regional data center here at Lamont. For my session here, we will be discussing the regional perspective on capacity development through an hour-long discussion. I have a panelist in person here with me and a few of them online. So the way we're gonna set it is questions and then answers. So before I introduce my panel, I will give you a little bit of what we're going to discuss and how things are going during the session. So as mentioned before in the previous session, we know now that the latest updates, we have 24.9% of the ocean mapped with high resolution data. But all of this is not happening without people. So we fill the gaps in terms of data, but we need to know where are the gaps in terms of skill set and how people can join us in this great endeavor. So along with me, we will have Rochelle Whitley, Dr. Rochelle Whitley. We will have Victoria Obura, and we will have Julap Ratnaik. I'm sorry if I misspell your name, but I will just go with your first name. I will let you guys introduce yourself. I think we have up first Dr. Rochelle and Whitley with me, so go ahead.
And in the program, I'm Wrigley. I'm not the chewing gum. I'm actually Wrigley. So I'm last year, you know, about calls me Rochelle. I'm the program director for the Foundation DevCo training program at the Center for Coastal Ocean Mapping, Joint Cartography Center at the University of New Hampshire. And I've been doing it now for 12 years, running the training program. We're in year 19 of the training program, and we have 113 alumni from 46 coastal states who've been through the program to date.
All right, thank you, Roxy. Next coming up, if you can hear us, Julap, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi everyone. My name is Julap, and I'm a hydrographic surveyor at the National Hydrographic Office in Sri Lanka. I'm responsible for conducting hydrographic surveys and mapping. My role involves using surveying equipment, processing data, and producing accurate bathymetric products and navigation information. I studied in the year 18 as a TEDco student.
All right, and we also have Victoria who is joining us online today. Hey, Victoria, can you hear us?
She's muted.
Oh,
Hold on.
hold on, Victoria, we're getting there.
Wait.
Now. Lamont,
So I'm
Victoria.
Victoria Obura. I'm a principal hydrographer. I work with the Kenya National Hydrographic Office. I'm a DEBCO year 15 alumni.
Okay, and yours truly. My name is Tina Martin. I am, again, I am data manager at Lamont. I joined the training in 2016, making me year 13, and I'm originally from Madagascar. You've heard a little bit about what I'm doing during the updates in the previous session, and I will be moderating this panel discussion. So as you can see, we have all of us here in the panel are alumni from the DEBCO training. So Roxy, can you tell us a little bit about the training, what it's about, so people know what we were there?
What I forgot to add is I'm also an alumni of the training program. I did it in year 4. So it's been really useful that I did the training, so I kind of understand as I've taken over like what's involved. So as I said, we now have 113 scholars from 46 coastal states. And some of the remarkable statistics, more than 85% of the alumni are still in the same organization they were when they came to the training program. And for capacity building, that's quite impressive. So the training really has been thanks to the Nippon Foundation who support us to develop skills in people. They really believe that people are going to make the difference, make the change. And so they support the training because they're supporting developing skills in people. They see that a global network of people can lead change. And so that's really what the training program is about. We come to the Center for Social Mapping. They give a Cat A certified education. They do much of the same coursework that the graduate students do at CCOM. So they study alongside the graduate students. So they get us a world-class education, plus they're building this amazing network of alumni from around the world. And I think that's really been the core of it, is it's a good education, a really good education, and a really good network of people.
Yes, so my next question is gonna be open to any of you, three of you. So yes, the JEPCO training seeds, plant seeds in the community within to connect and activate regional initiatives, create more projects, all to cover the oceans with, bathymetric data, and also improve our understanding of our ocean. So the question might be towards Julap and Victoria. How would you describe your experience as a student or scholar during the training, and how has it impacted your work and your community? So whoever.
Well, I would really say that after this training, I've gotten myself into participating and collaborating in various regional activities like the Southern African Islands Hydrographic Commission. And there I've also met alumni from Mauritius who went through the JEPCO program. At a national level in the country, we have the Kenya National Hydrographic and Oceanographic Committee, which brings together ministries and departments and agencies that carry out hydrographic activities like the Ports Authority, the Kenya Navy, and we really work together under the banner of the Kenya National Hydrographic and Oceanographic Committee. For instance, right now, I'm actually out in the field around the shores of Lake Victoria. We are working with the Maritime Authority to build search and rescue centers around Lake Victoria, which is shared by Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania.
Nice. Julap, do you have anything to add?
Now, Kenya has a research vessel, which is, Kenya has a research vessel, which is with the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. And institutions are always invited to carry out the activities they do in their respective departments. I've also been participating in passing down knowledge, the next generation of ocean mappers. There's one we did together with Rochelle under the NFIHO GeoMark training course last year around September. We've done the Ocean Teacher Global Academy of IOC UNESCO with Amon for participants who are from all over Africa. That was Amon and I, who's also a JEPCO alumni, and Mohamed from Egypt, with the assistance by Roxy and Aya, getting the software demonstrations and stuff. On a personal level, I'm a board member of the Organization of Women in Science in the Developing World, and we walk around high schools and colleges to encourage female students to take up STEM-related courses, and I really root for ocean mapping. We also had career talk, is it some 2 weeks ago with Tina?
Yes.
At Eduardo Mondlane University, which is in Mozambique. Tina is from Madagascar, I'm from Kenya. Mozambique is part of the Western Indian Ocean region. So we were invited to Tina to give a talk on ocean mapping and encourage the university students in geospatial sciences to think about getting into ocean mapping.
Yes. Oh, yes, you're correct. We were in that, we did a talk, like inspiring students from Mozambique last week. Okay, Julap, do you have anything on your side?
Yes. Skills of Nippon Foundation has wanted to JEPCO to train 5 ocean mappers, including me, for Sri Lanka since 2008. Among them, there are two university lecturers in oceanography and hydrography, and also the current chief hydrographer of Sri Lanka is also a former JEPCO scholar and also deputy hydrographer. She is also a JEPCO scholar. And also I'm the very recent JEPCO scholar from Sri Lanka. Actually, hydrographic education and training is the baseline for generating new hydrographers and cartographers, and is also essential for maintaining the hydrographic officers and services in their constant activities. As the nature of conducting hydrographic service and producing standard nautical charts, critical hydrographic education and practical training ought to be world standard and include modern technology. Again, CCOM is the one of the cornerstone in the hydrographic community for its research and development activities. I believe that CCOM is the ideal place to study the ocean mapping. Also, it should be mentioned that JEPCO training has produced valuable human resources for Sri Lanka. I think Sri Lanka now has a considerable strength in ocean mapping or hydrography in terms of human resources. We have completed 60% of the near shore area up to 200-meter depths. Actually, despite recent effort to map and characterize Sri Lankan waters, significant gaps remain in our knowledge, the seafloor shape and general geological characteristics in the offshore areas. Mainly, our understanding of the deep ocean is actually far worse. So our main aim is to develop our ocean mapping capabilities, deep ocean mapping capabilities in the near future, and we are looking forward to also contribute our data to the JEPCO.
Oh, I already resonate a few things from your answers. So I have two questions that I've shared with you, but don't worry if I skip some of them because you have answered some, or if I, get some other questions on the flow. I understand that you guys you're still in the same field, but your career has been really improved. My question is, I can understand that you've been training your community, and I want to know more details of the needs of your community. Is it something related to, processing data? Is it acquiring data? Where can we actually pinpoint the needs and the gaps? Again? Hello, someone? All right, I'll try to explain. From my point of view, I'm from Madagascar, and I've seen in so many ways that we can develop seafloor mapping initiatives in our country, in my country. I think it's very important that first people hear about seafloor mapping, not that they think, oh, it's been mapped, we don't need to go out there anymore, or we have data but we don't share them. So I think the first thing we need to do is identify institutions and understanding what are these institutions' needs. That's for my country. I can speak for. What about you guys? What you think we need to start or develop in terms of skills and capacity building?
From my point of view, I think we can begin on more regional training platforms. Most of the Nippon Foundation alumni, as you have said, are doing a lot of, giving talks, or like the IHO and FGeoMap training and the IOC UNESCO. I think we should do more of this. And maybe an IHO banner, a one-month training course on data collection, processing, especially around the Indian Ocean, where most of the developing countries are coming from.
Right. Roxy?
I think for me, one of the problems is we can only do so few people at a time. And so I think we need to somehow find a way to support the alumni when they go home so that we can multiply this in some way. The GMF training was really good because we got 7 or 8 alumni together and we led a 2-day workshop for the actual cartographers. But that only came around because the Nippon Foundation wanted the cartographers to know that there was more to mapping the ocean than making beautiful shots. So he wanted them to be introduced to ocean mapping. And somehow I think we need to find a way to do more of these sort of like taking our skills and sharing them. Because we do need CCOM with a lot of skills and that. And I do agree with Victoria that we should be looking at ways of sort of multiplying the training that we're getting. And I'm not entirely sure what that is, but it's something we should probably look at.
I don't know if Jalap has anything to add.
Actually, I have a few ideas. I just want how to I can contribute to this goal. Actually, I would like to suggest to create access to modern technology, including survey results, sonar systems, and data processing software is crucial for effective capacity development. Also, alumni can help facilitate access to such technology and infrastructure through partnerships or by sharing their own resources. It is suggested that create a pool of instruments and softwares that can be shared within Indian Ocean countries. It will be beneficial for countries like Sri Lanka.
All right, I think we are taking notes in the meeting and then this valuable input will be taken into account. So from Roxy's, I'm gonna switch gears here. From Roxy's introduction, we are a huge network of people coming from several, I mean, not just several, but very diverse background and states. Probably the question is gonna go to Roxy again. So we recognize that cultural diversity plays an important role in shaping how we understand the ocean. Can you provide us some perspective on how those cultural approaches can contribute to more comprehensive mapping effort?
Like, how many examples do you want? I think a really good place to start is the Short Ocean Discovery X Prize. And I think that really showed the world that putting together a sort of a global network of people, we were eventually 80 people from 22 countries that worked on that solution, allows everybody to find their own niche, the point and the place where they're good. And bringing together people with such sort of diverse backgrounds and cultures really allows us to want to ask questions that we would never think to ask. People ask different questions that you don't think about asking because it's something you just take for granted. And so having those interesting questions makes us reassess how we do things, think about things. And so that's been a really interesting aspect of the training program, is we have people from fishery sciences to spatial geodesy and everything else in the middle. So they all come with questions that we just don't think to ask. And so that's a really important part of having a sort of a global network, is we ask different questions. We approach things differently, we look at things differently. And if we listen to those different voices, we can do some really interesting things. So that's one of the important parts. And also coming with different educations and backgrounds allows us to approach things differently, because we are a relatively small community and we tend to do things the way we know. And so by being challenged by people to do things either don't know or do things differently makes us reassess our approaches, and that can be really useful. And it's something I've learned a lot from the training program, is to listen to the sort of unusual questions or unusual approaches. It might help us do something differently.
All right. I think some of us also have some experience, working, collaborating with other alumni or different groups in our region. I'm not gonna pitch for my experience, but I would ask my friends, alumni here, how did they actually foster collaboration with these, new entities or new institutions or new partners? I'm thinking of you, Victoria, who were involved with the training OTCA, for example, or the other projects that you've been involved to. How did you, first, the question is, did you experience any challenges collaborating with these people, and how did you address those gaps or these challenges in terms of the capacity development?
I would say language barrier a little bit because some of African countries speak English and others French and Portuguese. You remember even during our career talk, like, yeah, there was really the language barrier from the post instructor to the translator on some of the issues. There's also the issue of softwares, acquisition and licensing, and I had to consult Roxy and Aya, who connected us with Mohammed from Egypt. And yeah, that's how we were able to deliver the course content. That's the, how do you call it? That's the, sorry, the course, the delivery content part of it, but now the hands-on practicals, yeah, there's limitations because of the software acquisition, and yeah, most of the hydrographic software are not open source like GIS.
All right, I'm just gonna say something here. So we've, the project CIBA 2030 and all the enthusiasm in trying to cover us up the ocean floor, there are resources that are available from, collecting data. We heard Christy in our session talking about cruise pack and the other tools that are available to the global community. The question is, do you guys have access to that? Do you feel like this is helpful for you, or do you still have to rely on commercial softwares? And how do you feel about that? Like, those tools are out there.
Actually, recently, in Sri Lanka, we adopted MB system. MB system for processing bathymetric data for crowdsourced bathymetric data we collected from ocean cruises and some ocean engineering projects conducted within Sri Lanka. So also we use some open source bathymetric tools like Bathyglove Gap Filler, Sound Speed Manager, and Cluster, OpenSide Scan, and QC tool found within HydroOffice for our workflows, ocean mapping workflows. Also, we encourage training students who comes to the National Hydrographic Office as trainees to use open source software. But we have observed that they don't prefer much to use open source software because the learning curve is very deep and there are some lot of complex compatibility problems.
Yeah, that's good that you actually have some crowdsourced bathymetric mapping going in your region. I hope that you succeed. I mean, of course, you will succeed in that project and all that task. We would be glad to, see you pinned on the map in the ShapeCo map sometimes when, in due time and in due course, we would like to see that. All right, thinking about the challenges again. So most of the time when we want to train or share skills, we come to some hurdles. Mostly it's governmental, or institutional. I can see sometimes. But did you guys, can you share on your own experience some best practices or like some tips for our audience to, So when we develop skills in general, we have the students, we have the professionals, but we also need to make our authorities aware of the importance of mapping the ocean. So I know, Victoria, I know you guys are both in institutions that are already doing it, but do you have any experience where you collaborate with scientists, for example, who have different needs, how do you address that? Did you have any of this experience?
I think when you plant a seed and take care of it, it grows. And JIPCO has a lot of follow-up projects that our alumni are involved in after training and platforms that support their growth. For example, I worked in the CKIT, where we did the UK continental shelf. I'm also currently a beneficiary of the NOAA at Sea program on empowering women in hydrography and IHO. And also the JEPCO sponsored my participation in the IHO Third Assembly, although the visa period was short, but clearly they really do support their alumni. So working with different partners, it also makes data exchange a little bit not restricted, because under the National Hydrographic Office, when I need some data from National Oil or the Maritime Authority or even the Ports Authority that it hires its own contractors like Boskalis to come and do dredging along the channel and land reclamation. When we meet these people in meetings, the exchange of data and information becomes really easy because I've been working with them and we are having this banner that brings together all ministries and departments that carry out hydrographic activities.
Good. Any input from?
I want to say, between Map the Gaps, which is a nonprofit started out of the training program alumni, and some of the NOAA projects, the Caledon projects, I've tried really hard to keep the alumni in projects when they leave the training, because they do a year of training and many of them are coming from developing nations. They leave CCOM and they're working in this amazing world with all this lovely software and all this beautiful hardware, and they go home as a single person, and it's actually quite hard as a single person to make change. So I've tried to, when possible, build little like global centers. In Sri Lanka, we had 4 people. In Kenya and Tanzania, we now have 4 people. So I'm trying to get little global hotspots where people can work together. That has helped. And then, like Victoria said, is we're trying to make projects where we've got the alumni involved afterwards, because it's those networks of people that are going to make the difference. Knowing someone who knows someone who can help you answer a question can make a difference. James told me a really good example. One of the alumni has been working with John Nyberg from NOAA, and he found out that they were looking for a marine license to work in
Marine scientific research.
MSI license, yeah. And he said to John, well, if you're going to get one of these, why not just do a couple of days mapping? And so NOAA did some really good mapping in Kiribati for the country that would never have got mapping. And that only happened because someone was an alumni who happened to know it was possible, who then was working with NOAA as a post-training program with collaboration. So it's these little examples that are really good. We have another alumni who's working with the map group, Diego, who's working really hard to get Castles bathymetry going. And so he has this network of people he's met through the training. And he's now trying to take this knowledge and spread it to his own community. And I think more people we get doing that, and it's by supporting them after the training that's helping as well. So you can't just train, you've got to train, you've got to support post-training. And I think that's where the training program has been successful, and we've tried really hard to keep post-training collaborations going and keep building the network. So it's not just a network of alumni, but it's a network of alumni and all the other projects they've worked on. Because if you work with people, you build those relationships, and it's those relationships that kind of help lead change and help people who need, access to data, to hardware, to software, to training, to skills, just to answer questions. And I think that's where capacity building is really important. It's not a once-off, but it's the start of the process. You need to keep supporting. And those alumni that have stayed involved after the training are often the alumni that made the biggest difference. So those alumni that have managed to get involved in projects, who stayed part of the network, have really made big differences and big changes in their own countries. And I think to the oceanographic community.
Indeed. Maybe I also have some little probably suggestions. It's always good to have exchange of experience and knowledge among our community as SQL mapper. But what I experienced last year in South Africa was I was probably among people who are mostly biologists, ecologists, they need maps. And when I presented my poster, they were like eyes wide open, like really that exists, you can access this information. So yeah, again, we need to make the information we are always up with it because every year we have a new chapter created, but how people use it, who uses it, and this information and how they can integrate it in their work or where can they, bring their needs is also important. So yeah, when we share, like I was sitting with some of the scientists and explain to them, this is what we do, this is how you can use this product. And if it's not fitting your need, we need to know what are the standards. So this kind of exchanges needs to happen between alumni, yes, but also between different groups of the community. So in that way, they understand their way of using our product. We understand their needs, and then together we can work towards the goal of better understanding our ocean and then better visualizing what's underneath the ocean. All right, Jalap, I didn't forget you. Do you have anything to ask the question? I'm so sorry. You're still there. All right. Can you hear us?
Justin, I can hear you.
Yes, I was just wondering.
Quite a lot of
if you-
echoing.
Sorry?
Sorry, say again.
Yeah, okay, so do you have any input to the past question about collaborating with different groups and do you have any tips or suggestions or for best practice?
Yes, of course, actually, I think it's good to engage all stakeholders, especially including all government agencies, academic institutions, and industry professionals, local communities, and also non-profit organizations. Also, we need to assess need assessment also conduct to assessment to understand the specific requirements and challenge faced by the community. Also access to the technology and tools. Ensure the access to necessary technology and tools for mapping, including hardware, software, and data resources. Promote the use of open source software. Also networking and collaboration fosters networking opportunities and encourage collaboration among individuals and organizations in mapping, establish platforms for sharing experience and lesson learned. Also community engagement, engage the local communities in mapping initiatives and capacity building efforts. Also, to ensure the synergy and maintain the momentum in mapping, capacity building to continue evaluations and to use an adaptive approach to capacity building.
All right, thank you for that input. So I'm also tracking the time here, like where are we, how are we doing? And I think we're kind of doing well. I might have two more questions and then we are gonna have our little break. The next question, going back to, the diversity of this network. Or let's see how, so we've discussed about the tools, the different roles that we have. You could be the person who acquired the data, you could be the person who instruct the community, you could be the person behind, making, you could be part of the authority that makes the project, available and help those projects, those mapping projects going. The question for you guys is, what you think would be more impactful, like on the short term for capacity development and impact? Like promoting the use of what we already have, what would be actions that we could take in the short term? Especially, again, for making the data available, acquire more data, or generate more products.
It's a tricky one. I think the impacts can be sort of like multi-pronged. I think the alumni have the ability to communicate within their own countries and their own organizations in a language that makes sense to the locals. And I think we need to take advantage, not the actual language, whether it's English, Spanish, and Portuguese, but in a kind of cultural language that might be able to push the message that we're not getting through. They might also, I think we found that a lot of alumni know the relevant people or relevant organizations to communicate with. And so maybe that's one of the impacts we can have, is using this network to make sure we're communicating with the right people. But in the same way, I think we also need to support the alumni, because a lot of the alumni are early career scientists. And so that they're not yet senior enough to have a big voice. And so somehow we've got to find a way to both utilize them and support them. And I think that's where the impact can be, is that we can, let the local organizations know how skilled they are, how important they are as part of the bigger network, and then use them to communicate within the organizations the message of how important CETA mapping is. So I think that's one of the places where we can have an impact, is we do have this global network of people. So let's support them and use them.
You just passed the message, Roxy. I hear you. Victoria and Judah, what do you think would be action we need to take, or initiatives for the short term in terms of capacity development to have more impact? Anyone?
Well, yeah, as I previously stated that
Oh,
actually we are in like countries like Sri Lanka. Actually, we are like they're like instrumentations and infrastructure to conduct some deportation mapping. I think TEPCO is very passionate about deportation mapping. So actually, my suggestion is to sharing infrastructure and instruments between countries that can be mobilized time to time for ocean mapping projects, so we can accelerate collecting data.
we need to collect more data actually, and there's collaboration needed over there. Victoria? Yes, 3 of us, right?
And she's muted.
Hydrography is an expensive affair, I think, from training, collection of data, even the platform where you work on, it's not as easy as land survey, yeah. So more emphasis should also put in reaching out to governments. For example, when Kenya joined the IHO, when I came from training, Kenya joined IHO in 2021, and I've seen the government really having a positive reception of these hydrographic activities. Yeah, and we are involved, the hydrographic office is also involved in the Blue Economy Zero Draft. We work with the International Maritime Organization on safety of life at sea. Yeah, so it all comes up from government policies if they are able to buy the idea through effective communication with them.
Fine. So I'm probably gonna narrow down the question to that we are here at the regional mapping community meeting. So we have the regional data center that can be a support for all these initiatives, not just for the alumni, but I mean, not just for projects that are led within the alumni network, but led by alumni in their own region. And we are here to support you, provide you with resources, but we need to know what exactly are those resources that you need, like kind of trainings and, you know, once we exchange those information, we are more capable to provide you accurate support. So I think I would ask now in the room if anyone has a question for our panelists.
If I can pick up on that, I would like to hear from the panelists what we as a regional center could do differently, do more of, what we could provide to you in terms of messaging, data, information, tools. What is it? How can we help to accelerate and amplify what you're doing so that we can grow capacity and meet our mutual goals?
This is actually made a note for myself here. I think I need to contact the alumni and actually see on an individual basis what they individually need. Because it's all very well as saying they need help, but maybe if they can give us specific examples, it might actually be easier. Because I know what they need, we know what they need, but unless we got I think we need to start getting actual like specifics.
And how can we use that information, their current needs, our collective vision to build a strategy? Because we can't do everything at once. We have limited human resources, we have limited financial resources. How can we build something that is, you know, going to be as impactful as possible and sort of lays out the next several years so we can achieve some goals together?
All right. Victoria ended up. Any response? Any ideas, suggestions?
I'll add another point that maybe will help clarify or give you something more to think about. Because you might not be able to answer that right now, just sort of on the fly or quickly. But what kind of forum or platform, what could we do to facilitate this conversation? Is it that we bring many alumni together and have a focused meeting to think about this strategic plan? Do we solicit input virtually in written form? Like, what do you think would be most effective? Is it a combination? I really want to defer to you as the experts in these different communities to help us have a stronger connection and more impact and be more supportive.
No, I think it's really important. You know, we do have an alumni meeting in Tokyo in the first week of August. And if we can perhaps come out of that alumni meeting with a kind of a collective strategy of how we'd like to be involved, I think that could be really, really valuable. And so rather than looking, you know, to develop new projects or to do something else, but look how we can collectively put a strategy to get us working in other projects. Might be really interesting about doing this. Because a lot of alumni do want to get involved. One, there's always a financial burden because a lot of the alumni come from developing countries without money. But we've also learned that you can do things over remote platforms and we need to develop those. We did XPRIZE 90% remotely, so it can be done. A lot of the CBIT 2030 work's done remotely. So we've just got to find a way to improve communication to get these platforms working. And I think for me, one of the goals of this meeting in Tokyo might be to start building a strategy of how we get alumni involved in projects and improve that communication.
And to your point from earlier, Roxy, one of the great benefits of this network is it brings different perspectives. And we as a regional center want to hear those perspectives and understand how we can amplify the good work that's being done and the needs and help to address them. So.
Yeah.
Anything from our Victoria did not? Okay, so I think this was a very constructive and very informative session about what we can do and the needs, also the next step that we need to take as the regional center and as alumni and as a network to improve the capacity development within our community. I really want to thank you, Steve, Victoria, Angela, to have joined us today. And then, I'm lost at words. Because, yeah, it was very important to hear the voices from you guys as alumni. I'm an alumni. Hear our voices and make known what we need to contribute better in the goal of not just the 2030, but I think it's the global goal to, use sustainably our ocean and understand it better. So I think we have some gaps that we can this is where we need to put work and this is where we need to have progress. So thank you so much for all your inputs. If you still join us after for the next session, please stay on the line and see you later. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Tina, and thank you to the panelists. I think we're going to take another brief break. Stretch our legs here in the room and get prepared for the next panel discussion, which will focus on regional coordination. So back in a few.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for the people that are joining through YouTube live stream. We really appreciate it, and for everyone that's here in person. We're back. Now we're gonna start our following panel discussion session. My name is Sheila, and I'm gonna be the moderator of this session on regional coordination. Through this hour-long discussion with our panelists, the goal of the session is to identify the most common challenges as well as best practices, regional coordination within our community. We also want to showcase opportunities for better dynamics and communication between different regions, as well as identifying common needs of communities with respect to assets in using and sharing biometric data. For the discussion, we have brought together our panelists who are leaders in regional coordination within their respective roles. So thank you so much for being here, the ones that are here in person and the one that we have remotely. We really appreciate it. And also like, thank you just to agree to have this discussion together. So we can go ahead with introductions. My name is Sheila, as I said earlier. I studied environmental earth and science at City College of New York here in New York City. When I finished last year, I had the opportunity to get an internship here at University, just processing seafloor data, and I eventually became full-time, and now I'm a data manager for the Atlantic and Indian Ocean Regional Center. I'm very happy to be here, and there's still so much that I have to learn. But that's me. And now I want our panelists to introduce yourselves, and also, since our discussion is focused on regional coordination, I would love to hear about your career paths and regional coordination roles that you may have had before and what you're doing now.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Yes, so my name is Belén Jiménez. I am originally from Spain, but have been a little bit around the world. One of the things I like when I make a CV update, I always like to update the little dots in the map. I always put a map of the places where I have worked in, because I think it represents a lot about that kind of ability to understand different cultures, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. I'm an educated hydrographer, and I have also an MBA in technology management. So it's kind of things that I'm really passionate about, both the science of hydrography and ocean mapping, but then also like how can we do things differently? How can we make use of technology to develop in that path? And in my career, I've been in different roles. I started in the offshore construction industry, which was very different from where I am now. Then I transitioned into harbors and dredging, and I think both two worlds, they had something in common, that there was a lot of different stakeholders that had very different priorities. There was always like somebody contracting who had an interest, and then somebody doing the map that was trying to show what's the result, somebody which is the client expecting for something. So that gave me the first insights into kind of like how to talk to all the different stakeholders and make people understand each other and get a sensitivity for everybody's different, have different priorities. And at the end of the day, everybody's has their own right to have their needs met. So how can you find that balance and that middle point? And then in the last 5 years, I've been working in a hydrographic office in Denmark, where I've been working more with data management and technology development, and doing a lot of things related to how can we quality assure also a diversity of data, which is also coming from different stakeholders. Some of them can be the same kind of oil and gas industry or harbors, but then it's also the higher quality data from the hydrographic surveyors from the office. So that is also a different way to see diversity through the data. So I think both aspects are very interesting. And at the moment, I'm a data center manager for the CEBEC 2030 South and West Pacific Data Center based in New Zealand. And in there we have more than 40 different independent territories, which include a lot of, for example, Pacific Islands, regions in East Asia, South America. So it's very diverse, very big area where we are working coordination and regional approach to the CIBID 2030. So that's my summary.
Lovely. Julia? I'm Dr. Julia, and I presently work at UNH, and I have multiple hats that I wear at UNH, but one of them is a data manager for the North Pacific. The Arctic and North Pacific data manager, but CSUN we focus on just the North Pacific. So I have a PhD in marine and atmospheric sciences, so learned ocean mapping along the way in grad school. Get exposed to the academic side and geology and habitat mapping and those kinds of uses. And then I started working as a contractor for NOAA, for the Office of Service Integrated Ocean and Coastal Mapping Program. And there I get to do all sorts of different things with the mission of map once and use data as much as possible. So similar role to the 2030 mission of reaching out to as many people as possible and digging up who has data and convincing them that they should share that data with the rest of the world. And figuring out what they need to know in order to make their bosses comfortable or them personally comfortable with sharing that data, which is actually a really difficult thing to do. Like a lot of people were not aware that other people would want their data that has, you know, so I've experienced with that and trying to, you know, not just the obstacle surveys in terms of charting. So I get very familiar with the charting side of things, but there are a lot of different uses for data and a lot of different people out there that go out there for different reasons. Ellen mentioned a lot of the different sectors along the way, but there are a lot of people out there and a lot of them just want, they'll pay a lot of money for a survey and what they get is PDF. And you're like, you will get a PDF, you get this. But I learned a lot about that, and then one of my other tasks was working on national patent source project, which is creating the database and metadata and wrangling all those things in order to make everything fit that together, which again, like making a job go to so those are kind of the most relevant recent. Those are my tasks. They are my tasks, yeah, and they have a lot of different pieces.
And yeah, you're right, the business that we're in is a tricky business, but we're doing it, right? And lastly, we have our last panelist is, he's doing us remotely. Diego, if you can, yeah, you're muted. You can introduce.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is, hi. Hi, Jen. Hi, so my name is Diego Billings and I'm from Jamaica. I'm a senior hydrographer here at the hydrographic office. And I recently took over the CIBID 2030 CSB coordinator from Cecilia, who has done a really great job. So I'm just filling that gap, right? My career path, I was a land surveyor before venturing into ocean mapping, which I focus mainly on the geodetic infrastructure here in Jamaica, right? I'm a JEBCO alumni, year 16. And I didn't have any previous role in any regional mapping here in the Caribbean. Currently in the map region, we have like 15 member states and like 13 associate member states. So my role here really is to get everyone to submit their data to CIBID 2030, really to get everybody on board. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So those are our panelists, and obviously they have
extensive experience on different roles that are related to regional coordination, so I feel like we chose the perfect panelists for this session. And keeping that in mind, I would like to start the discussion with from your experience that you extensively described, in your view, what does effective regional coordination look like? Anyone can start?
Well, I can start. So I think it's a very good question, and effective regional coordination, I think, is about, first of all, identifying all the stakeholders who is within our region that is interested in this, and then reaching out to them and managing to engage with them to an extent that we actually understand their needs. What is that they're missing is exactly very, very related to what we were talking before in the previous panel. If we don't know what is stopping them, how can we help, right? And I think ultimately that also transforms not in a two-way conversation, but also in some kind of an ecosystem of a community being built there. And I think that also isolated regional coordination would not be enough. So for me, successful regional coordination also implies that we have some inter-regional coordination with a healthy overlap and dynamic and organic. So for me, that's kind of the dream utopic world that we hopefully can achieve, right?
I agree. Juliet, any thoughts?
Well, I think for one thing, there already exists many rural regional coordination groups, but most of us, even with years of experience mapping and reaching out to people, don't know all of them. And it's possible for one person to attend all the meetings, in one region. So I think there needs to be a little bit more awareness of what those groups are and making sure we're in contact with people that are participating in those different groups, because there's a lot. You've got a huge region in the South Pacific. So like know what's going on in every single subregion, never mind each country. It's great when we've got like people we've had at meetings, people we've worked with before, gone to CCOM and DECO that we know personally that can get us out, but like there's just so much there. So I think that's part of it. I mean, having web maps and interfaces is great things for if you don't know anything about it. And if you do know anything about it, be able to see that. That's wonderful. Having an interface where people can add things. We need to have it moderated because unfortunately we're almost full of people that stay on both sides and break them. But having things where people can add information, I think is important. I think having more resources that are repeated to regional groups about where to go to look to meet fellow mappers. Not just even like how to do it or how to share it, but like how do you meet those other experts? Because there are so many people that map and collect data and use data. It's a lot of people. The people that actually run a local sonar is a much smaller community than, but there are so many more people affected that pay for that data, that use that data, and trying to use these networks to spread that information out. Because I feel like, I mean, everybody here, you met somebody that uses ocean data and didn't know anything about the other side of other uses. And then you know there's a whole other group of people in the task.
So now we're talking about communication there.
Yeah.
Communication and between access between the different organizations that could be involved with it. Are you doing anything about it?
Yeah, and it might just be like more people going out and going to a different conference and having that conference connect back to websites that you have or different communities or meetings where people can find stuff. I mean, even if you just do a Google search, you can come up there to find things, which probably says we're really bad at making tags on how to find data, with the exception of like golden resource of NCI and BCBD, like besides that, they're, GMRT and it's lovely repository, but they're not the only ones that have repositories of data. So there's something about that communication that we're kind of all lacking. And I don't know what the solution is exactly, but there are people out there that do know how to do that. Solutions.
Yeah, we're gonna touch more on things like that and maybe some challenges and barriers with that we may have experienced. But that's our question, you're answering one way, so that's fine. But, Gail, do you have what's your view on what effective regional coordination, with like?
Yes, I do. I think once we break like the barriers in terms of like data sharing, all the challenges that comes with regional coordination. I think once we break those barriers, I then think we can have effective regional coordination, especially for data sharing. Because some of the challenges that I'm having here within the market region, but it's getting better in terms of like data sharing. I can actually speak for my country because we're in actually dialogue now to actually share all our data through the UKHO to CBET 2030. So they're actually looking at all the legal aspects of things before they actually do that. But once we overcome like these barriers, I think we can look at it as effective way for regional coordination. And another point is like the resource limitation as well. A lot of the member states here, no, I wouldn't say a lot, but a few of the member states here, some of them, they don't even have a hydrographic office, right? So, and point is that Antigua and Barbuda, right? And they said to me at the recent meeting that they got a multi-beam system, but there's no trained hydrographer there to actually use that system. So I think once so what one of the things that I'll be working on is trying to get down there to actually get them off the ground with that system, because we have a system like that in Jamaica. And once that system is up, they are willing to actually share their data with CBET 2030. So as I said before, these barriers, once we get around these barriers, I think we can look at that as effective regional coordination. Thank you.
It's very interesting how at this point of the conversation, and not only this panel, but just in the meeting that we have had in general, we have had so much mention of how some of the challenges that we face in the community are related to understanding the extent of the existing data and overcoming the restrictions to access to those data. We have made mention about that quite a lot. So going deeper into that, how, and this is sort of panel, right? How do you think regional coordination could help address these challenges? I mean, what could be done differently? We know that we need to get data, but moving forward, what could we do differently to help move the community towards that direction?
Well, one of the key things there is that data is not going to discover itself, right? And it's not going to knock our doors. It's the people holding the data that need to be contacted and that need to be engaged and that need to be also found in the first place. Because if we don't know about the data, that means also we don't know who has it. And maybe we are all the time assuming that it's the common actors that hold the data, but there can be others as well, right? And in there, I find, of course, that mapping of the stakeholder communities is one challenge. You don't know what you don't know. But then it's also once you find the right people, there is the cultural barriers and the language barriers that are very important. And it can be at different levels, because sometimes even just engaging and saying a few words and talking about what we're trying to do, that can be easy. But when we talk about, let's dig into what are the real barriers here, what are the real problems that the people who want to share the data but maybe are not there yet have. If you're not sharing your own language, it can be difficult. Like I even find myself right now, I'm here, now I'm in the US, so it's like, oh, everybody here speaks very good English. So I even can get self-conscious myself. I can remind like people who have less experience in exposing themselves in speaking English. And so it's really hard. I feel lucky in my region because I do have some of the countries that speak Spanish, which is my mother tongue. That's a luxury. I feel it's a luxury. But then when I have to engage with people from other places, I need to be super humble and realize, well, I don't know your language. I don't know what's your way of communicating. So let's start from the beginning and try to find a middle ground and try to find different ways to do it, right? But I also think that resources, Diego mentioned before, is a huge thing. That needs to be put into the table as well, big time, because I know people that would have liked to be here, for example, and cannot make it because of course they cannot cover the travel costs, right? So that's super important, and it's not the voices that are not being heard because they cannot afford just be in the place, or maybe they cannot even afford the time to spare for a meeting because they are overwhelmed with tasks in their home offices. So I think that's also a big one.
Yeah. Do they have anything to add?
Well, I covered a lot there. Well, I think sharing where data, once you have a contact and the data, getting people to share where their data is can be a challenge. Again, sometimes that is that resource of just having the time to go and dig and get the data out of where it's hiding. It's on a drive somewhere, it's gonna show up somewhere, or maybe they have a whole line of things that they're supposed to do before they share something. They have to check all these boxes and make sure the data is perfect, or
Yeah, very.
but that maybe it's just a little box that tells you where it is. Maybe it's not a little button, maybe it's a little box. Letting people know that there are lower thresholds for communicating. I think is important, as there are baby steps that, select to share your final products. Oh, great, and then we can wait for the rest. That Polygon is really very useful for mapping goals, so that we're not duplicating things. Box, less useful, but at least it tells us there's something there. And for some parts of the ocean, there's nothing else. To know that that's there is great. And communicating that with people that have a hard time sharing data is important.
Do you have anything to add, Diego?
Yeah, sure. The language, the culture barrier here, especially in the MAC region, which is I think there are a lot of Spanish speaking countries here as well. And not because of my name, Diego, I don't know no Spanish at all. So what I've been trying to do is work with a colleague in Honduras. So what he is doing for me is to actually like form a team. So whatever information I pass to him, right, he actually pass that information to the rest of the member states, like in Spanish as well. So that is a challenge for me. And in the coming weeks, like to kind of see so that I think I'll be doing like some Spanish courses to kind of better relate to those member states that actually speak Spanish as well. So, and there's just one other thing in terms of the data sharing. Recently here, and I will be speaking about Jamaica here. We have within our EEZ, we have this place called Petra Banks, right? It's really big. It's bigger than the island itself. And I recently found out that University of the West Indies, they did a LiDAR survey out there, right? So in terms of the data mining, so it's just for us now to approach the University of West Indies to actually get this information so that we can actually share it with Seabed 2030. So it's just to communicate. I think one of the key thing here is like clear communication with these stakeholders, right? And So I think once we have a clear communication with them, I think there will be no issues at all. So, yeah, thanks.
I love that you mentioned some of the things that you have done, in your organization to like address these barriers. Because, that's one of the things I wanted to discuss. I wanted to ask you guys some of the initiatives or better practices that maybe have been successful in your organization when it comes to like all these challenges and barriers that we have discussed, like, for example, Wetlands region, I know that it's not only very broad, like it's very vague, there's also like, the language barriers, because most of the Pacific coast in your region is like this speak Spanish, but then you go to the west of the Pacific and we have all these islands that have different languages, so, I would like to know how, from your organizations, how you have addressed some of the challenges that you have encountered.
So I think that the first part is to acknowledge those differences, right? And to know, well, we gotta have that conversation I was saying before, what is that is your challenge? But then something else is about whenever we take baby steps in one direction, try to also make an effort in replicating those stories in a way that they can be relatable, because I cannot go to a smaller nation, for example, talking about, hey, look at the US, they're sharing everything, right? Well, when we look at like all the organizations in the US are collecting data, all of the people that are working at places like NOAA, it's like, well, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier, right? So if we try to go from 0 to 100, it's something that is not gonna happen. I really like your proposal before as well about, well, at least give me what's the area of that data set that you are really thinking about sharing, but still cannot figure out how or cannot clear the legalities of it, right? Then we have it. So kind of thinking out of the box, a thing that is not black or white. And one of the big examples we have very recently is that we have been promoting process of imagery for a very long time, and it has been a little bit hard to get people engaged until there was one of the other countries, Palau, who took the step and said yes. And a few months ago, we shared together with them the success story, and just because they could share how it went, and don't get me wrong, they didn't share any kind of fairy tale story. It was also about how there were a lot of challenges, how it took much longer time to install the equipment, how it was much harder, but they did it. And they were doing it. And that really got a lot of the neighbor countries interested in process of imagery. When before they saw it as something very, very far away. It's like, oh, am I gonna have like now another task on top of all the tasks I have, or another frustration, or that's not the way we should approach it, right? So try to make big steps, try to find stories to tell which are relatable. Even like things like the map itself, the maps, most of the maps that we show when we go to the meetings, some people cannot even see their country in the map because it's got always in the same standardized place, right? So can we show maps that actually focus in the area where they can feel represented? It's just an example of how we can start with the wrong food or the right food if we just think about it before.
I think what you were saying about examples of having the people that they can talk to that have gone through the process. They've gotten approvals or they've gone through the process, going through the steps. Having other people, they can say they've done it, they worked through this process is really valuable. Especially when you're working with people and groups that have not gone through that process before. It's a little bit different if you're working with people who've done this a lot and they're just dealing with some bureaucracy in the back and that's holding things up. Or it's, there's some internal mechanism that they're dealing with it. If somebody's never gone through it, having other people to talk to say, this is what we did, this is how we can fix our boxes, how to share data, this is the conversations we have, get very similar concerns to you, or you can't what is this, like, being able to talk about that and is really great, and especially as you get into regions with similar cultures and whether it's the culture of an industry or countries with similar approaches to things, be able to share that is even greater, like that those bonds of, yeah, I understand you guys. I can commiserate with you about how hard this is.
Moving on a more positive side, because we just talked about challenges. What type of similarities do you feel that you have or that you share with other regional centers or in Diego skis with other hydrographic commissions? Because there are some similarities and we struggle with this. We go through the same challenges.
Diego, want to start this one?
Would you like to start here?
Sorry, can you actually repeat again, please? Sorry.
The question I asked is if what similarities you feel like you share with other regional centers or in your case with hydrographic commissions?
Okay, so what I have realized, especially at the recent IHO assembly, right? I think we have similar work plans actually with regards to CBA 2030 collaborations within each commission, right? We have the same goals, right? Which is to like, one of the goals is to like contribute existing non-public bathymetry data to the IHO, BC, DB, and the JEPCO grid. Yeah, I've noticed that. So we have quite a lot of similar collaborations within each commission. So the objectives basically are the same.
Any other thoughts?
I'd say we do a lot of the same things. So, some things are tailored a little bit differently because we've got different stakeholders that maybe we're trying to reach out to. But, a lot of what we're doing is very similar at all these different levels. In some cases, we're using the same tools to communicate, whether it's the WhatsApp or portal or same type of meetings, but sometimes we're doing things differently. And some of us are good at communicating with each other, and some of us haven't quite gotten that next step of communicating to the next level. That is a lot of work. All these things are a lot of work. So
Yeah. Interregional communication and collaboration is very important. That's one of the things that has stood out for me in this discussion. We need to have clear and better interregional communication with each other so we can move forward.
I think especially also between your center, the Latin Indian and our center, the Pacific, is a lot of things in common.
Yeah.
Because I've been reflecting about it lately, like how, like even between countries, when there is a decision to draw a border because of whatever geopolitical reasons, it happens that people who live close to the border happen to be very similar to each other, right? And in the same way, when we are making the limits of our regions, there is some similarities with the Hydrographic Commission, which is fantastic because that's one of the things that in the positive side that works very well, that having regional Hydrographic Commission coordinators like Diego, for example, makes our lives much easier. But at the same time, we have like sub-regions within the region. So we can have places a little bit more homogeneous, like the MAC, for example, which is most countries are similar in culture to a certain extent and can speak similar language. And other regions are so different, like the Indian Ocean for you guys, like the West Pacific for us. There's so many different cultures, so many different languages. So we can also, when we talk about the regional approach, what does that even mean, really, right? Because we need to make different strategies. We also have a lot of countries which fall in both regions, in at least 2 different regions. So I think that what you said is really spot on, Sheila, that making the coordination between the regions is something super important and that we can get better at. I think we've been doing some of that, but we can get better at that.
Yeah, that's why we have meetings like this. Yeah, good. We probably have time for like 2 or 3 questions. I would like to ask now, are there any specific actions that could be taken to help environmental efforts that will accelerate the global community towards the goal of 2030?
Well, I think we need some better maps. I think we definitely need better coordination maps. Because there are quite a few great things out there. Like, the US has some things, but NOAA's push for interagency coordination. People could share their plans. Now, not everybody's on there, but at least the federal agencies are supposed to be sharing their plans, making them help everybody. We can see the NCI data. There. And there are other instances of that, where people are very public about where they're going, what they're gonna collect. There's a last year, Frank was telling us about the Antarctica. The community there is very good about sharing their plans, because it's very limited resources to get to there, it's very expensive. And it at least pushes people sharing their plans of where they're going and the collecting data, even if it's not all published. But a lot of the rest of the world, we're not. People don't even know this exists. So it's, you need to do a deep dive into the literature, and somebody published an article or a abstract or something on this meeting. They coordinate, so. There's definitely a need for, I don't know, if it's a wiki, a page on the 2030 site, something where we start talking about some more of these regional coordination areas, and it may be hard at this point to just suck all that in, but having a better central site and then linking people to some of the more regional planning things where people get into, I mean, most websites from scratch, check with all of those kind of outcomes, what people are doing everywhere in the world. But having a better starting site and linking people to some of those more regional would be a great thing. And I don't think it's that difficult a goal within a year to like start something.
That and any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that we need to probably improve how we talk about the benefits of what we're doing. And not just the benefit for the specific people that we're trying to engage or agencies that we're trying to engage, but also for the wider society. And last night we were having a very inspiring conversation with Jessica and Christy, and we were talking about, are we using all the right channels right now? Are we communicating? And so my thought is like, we really need to make sure that we engage also younger people in all this. And I consider myself to be young, and I still think I'm very behind in all of the media things. For people that I know that work in media communication, 1 year old way of promoting things is too old already. So if we want to keep up, we need to make sure we engage also younger generations and we let them tell us how to do it. What we are doing already, we're doing great. I'm not saying we should stop doing it, we should continue, but we just need to add up more efforts and do things in a little bit more forward-looking way. And even I'm saying this with the perspective of, I don't know how that's gonna look like, and we should all be ready to be surprised. And we should all be ready to let go of control and say, can somebody else tell us what to do? I think Roxy was saying something very similar earlier. When people from the outside or from another generation or from another background come into the conversation, they're gonna surprise you. And they're gonna push your limits in different ways that you didn't expect, right?
Yeah, like a lot of things keep changing. I feel like that's something we have learned about it. If there's something we can say about this generation is that things change quickly. So if we want to keep, improving and moving forward in the goal that we have, we need to keep changing things at least a little bit as the time passes by, so. Because it can sound non-traditional in many of the approaches that people will suggest, but at the end of the day, those are the people that are in that space, and so maybe that's what we would need in certain aspects of what we want to do.
One of the things I was thinking about is this, the whole thing about recycling and the recycling culture and how I feel like, at least in my country, it was my generation who taught our parents that they have to do that. And we would study at school and get home and tell our mom, no, you cannot do that, you cannot throw that in that container because it goes in the other one, right? So that was a huge success story. So can we do something similar here as well? Can we try to reach not just the decision makers, but also the children of the decision makers and the younger people that are gonna push them and say, hey, guys, why are we not part of this project? That could be also another approach.
I must say that having the CBED 2030 campaign is great because like friends, family that are a little more distance, I get messages saying, there was something in the evening news about CBED 2030. Do you know about CBED 2030? Why, yes, I'm involved in CBED 2030. But it's a news story. We could ask the question about like, when is this ocean arc happening? The kids have a English feel like, but that CBED 2030 news story. So they said, I think you do something related to this. And I get a text instantly. So media makes a big difference in reaching out and telling people about things. And there are many, there's more avenues of media now. You know, I did. It's a little tiny pinch that we're experiencing, you know.
Yeah, sure. Diego, do you have anything to add on that?
Yes, because I think I agree with you all, because I think one specific action is to actually engaging with the global community, because what I've realized, and I have a virtual meeting with some government officials from the Turks and Caicos Islands and some more Caribbean countries this Friday, right? And I have a wonderful presentation for them in terms of what is CBED 2030 and crowdsourced bathymetry. Because what I have realized, a lot of them they don't even know what is crowdsourced bathymetry, right? And I gave them an overview, and they were actually excited, basically, right? So I think one of the actions we can look at is to engage more, right? Because I myself, I didn't even know that they did not know anything about CBED 2030. And this is a colleague from Jamaica. He's the head of the surveys and mapping division in Turks and Caicos Islands, right? So he's a very close friend of mine and stuff. So based on discussions, actually, the Turks and Caicos Islands, they're actually are on board basically to actually submit their data. And I think the UKHO, they just did a massive LiDAR survey down there as well. And I myself have a wonderful working relationship with the UKHO. So I'll be speaking to my friend Nathaniel Knapp about submitting that data to CBED 2030 as well. So it's just engaging these small islands and even the global community as well. I think that is an action that we can actually do more.
Yeah, this conversation has made me realize about my own experience. I just finished my undergrad in college last year and I started working for this project, and I've been involved in environmental science space for years now, and I didn't know about the project. So I feel like that says a lot about the way that maybe the way that things are being promoted or communicated should change, because for such a global effort, I will think that it will be more known. I'm very happy that I got to learn about it, and now I'm contributing to it, but I feel like that I keep talking about it to everyone that I know around my age group, because I feel like it should be more known, and people, if I have been involved in the space for so long, I didn't know about it. That's something. We have a question from Vicky.
Yeah, I have a comment, I think, and a question. So the comment is that I think part of what we've been hearing is that we need to figure out the right balance between the centralized sort of monolithic approach and the distributed approach. And I think that with a project of this magnitude and a task so big as what we are trying to accomplish, it's gonna have to be a balance between them, and finding that balance is what we're still struggling with. Also, just as a reminder, the concept of these regional centers really is based on the notion that building small coherent pieces as regions can come together and sort of become the fabric of this map that we're building as a global community. And so I think that there's real power there. In the next session, we're going to talk about how to distribute more tools and get more people more broadly engaged, so that we're working against this sort of old school monolithic centralization strategy or idea that has a role, but is not the only way that we're going to accomplish this. My question has to do with equity. And thinking about, we heard earlier today, and we all tend to know this, I think, in this field, how expensive it is to acquire seafloor mapping data, particularly if you are in a nation that is developing and less resourced than, I sit here in the US very privileged with lots of data at my fingertips. A culture and an expectation of open data sharing is not that way everywhere. How do we address this inequity and justify or deliver the message in a way that is palatable to nations that don't have the same kind of resources? Why should they share their data when it's so hard for them to get access to these data in the first place? What are your thoughts?
Credit is really important. Giving that credit, making that bright and bold and pretty with it. And for some people, that's a different kind of credit. Because, if you're dealing with different government organizations or even private companies, that money and hard work and sweat went into that, and somebody had to negotiate and get permission to do that, and just giving your data away. It's great in the US, you get open data into your funding and NSF contract, and you publish a paper and yay, I'm a great scientist and I give away my data. NOAA, I give my data away to free the world, which are awesome. But most people don't have that luxury. And in order to even NOAA, they need to be able to tell people that give you the money how you're affecting all the other people. What you get able to say that you did this. It's a great thing, it's helping other people, and this is a valuable thing.
So I'm interested in a non-US perspective in this in particular, sorry.
How do you do that,
Yeah,
right?
just the last word is exactly what I was thinking about. It's about the value. It's about the value proposition, right? I recently heard something saying it's not the business model that gets the things rolling, it's the value proposition, right? So it's about how do you communicate what's in there after that. And farther from our hydrographic ocean mapping perspective, it's like, as Sheila was saying, the fact that as a student in environmental sciences, you don't know about this project, is an issue, is a challenge. So one thing that we are seeing now in the Pacific region is that some countries that were struggling to get the funds and were struggling to get, of course, like if you're struggling to get even the data acquired, how are you going to be thinking about sharing it? And somebody's approaching you, you don't even have it yet, and they're asking you for the data, where it's like, what I mean, can you let me breathe a little bit? But what's happening now is that governments are starting to see things as, for example, MSCI marine spatial planning as a really big thing to boost their nations and to boost their economy, and are relating that to the ecosystems, to the economy, to the tourism. So now they're realizing that the background for that is actually imagery, and they're managing to get that into the conversation of the decision makers. So it's a huge success story, and I think we should try to follow that. And there is in the West Pacific Hydrographic Commission, there is a MDI working group, which is working with a lot of these ideas and helping also to spread the kind of the concept of MSCI related to the World Bank model, which is helping the nations thrive in that sense. And one of the things that this working group has done is create a value proposition for data sharing. Why should I share my data? What is in it for me? Because at the end of the day, that's what people need to see a value in that. If it's just for the good of humanity, well, if you have enough time to think about that, that's great. But when you are like struggling to meet all of your other goals, like you need to see something on it for it, and it's fair enough.
Do you have any comments, Diego, on that question Vicky asked?
Okay, yeah, sure. Actually, I actually support and agree with all the comments just now, right? And I think for me personally, one of the methods that I'm using is to okay, for example, just the other day, my boss, right? Currently now, our hydrographic office is a trusted node, right? And one of the ways how I got that to work out is that I did a presentation to her to let her know the importance of data sharing and with materials provided to me by Seabed 2030, right? And she actually bought into the vision of Seabed 2030, actually. So I don't think every government looks at the return or the money that is being spent, right? I think some just want to know that it's a very good cause if they submit their data. And I think that I think Jamaica is one of that country, and as well as Turks and Caicos, because they don't have the resources to actually purchase these multi-beam systems, right? And when I told them about the crowdsourced bathymetry in which they would actually get these data loggers for free and stuff, they were, oh yes, we're on board, yeah, we need to do this thing, right? So I guess it varies for different countries.
Well, if we don't, we're out of time, actually, but we could keep this conversation going. We're having this meeting, but that's something that is up here. So we can always keep talking about this and just think about better ways to do things and keep going forward. I thank the panelists here for joining me in this session, and we're gonna take a quick coffee break, but when we come back, we're gonna talk about distributing work tools and workflows to empower the community. We'll be back. Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are now starting back our final session with the Atlantic and Indian Ocean Regional Mapping Community Meeting. This session is called Accelerating Towards 2030, Coordination and Collaboration. First, we have Corey Goodrich with TCARTA to speak here for us. Corey, are you available? Awesome. Hi, Corey. I'm going to give you the screen. If you want to share your presentation, we'll be happy to hear from you. If you're able to, if you're not able to unmute, we'll fix that. Okay, cool. Got it, sweet. Cool.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Absolutely, thank you.
Great. Let me share my screen. Okay. How's that looking for you?
Looks
all?
really good.
Okay, great. Just push you on this side here. Okay. Greetings from Denver, Colorado. A big thank you to the group and to Vicki and Haley and the team for inviting me here to present to you on the technical exchanges and distribution of tools among private industry, international hydrographic organizations, and institutions of higher learning. I'll just do a quick disclaimer at the beginning that when I am a little bit stressed, I sometimes lose my words. So I am going to be reading from my notes and preparations for the presentation so I don't miss anything. My name's Corey Goodrich. I'm a majority owner and a managing partner at TCARTA Marine. TCARTA is a space-based coastal mapping company working from landlocked Denver, Colorado. We have specializations in marine remote sensing and GIS for the purpose of improved mapping and better understanding of the world's littoral zones. I'm proud and feel really fortunate to be the one here today representing our talented and passionate team. We have 16 multidisciplinary and international individuals with subject matter expertise in a variety of fields to tackle the technical challenges of surveying coastal waters from space. Before I jump into today's briefing topics, which I'm very excited to share with you, I just wanted to briefly refresh on topics TCARTA presented to the AIORC in July. Beginning with the fact that many of the technologies that you'll hear about in this presentation and then again later in my lightning talk are technologies that came out of grant funding. As a recipient of NSF and NOAA's Small Business Innovation Research Phase 1 and Phase 2 grants, and as a participant in the NGA Accelerator Program, TCARTA has long carried the torch for goals such as scalable global bathymetry data production, accessible user-friendly tools, and satellite-derived bathymetry as a complementary technology to traditional methods, not a replacement. In our previous briefing, we dove into Seabed 2030 data from TCARTA. Most specifically, we told the story of the Maldives regional data production, an initial training and capacity building. We had collaborated with the Hydro Office of the Mexican Navy, and an initial capacity building and collaboration with the National Land Agency of Jamaica. Today's briefing will include further collaboration with Jamaica's NLA. You've heard a little bit about that agency, obviously, from Diego this morning. And we'll also highlight some collaboration that we're currently involved in with the University of Southern Mississippi and the Marine Institute of the University of Newfoundland. The QR code on this page here, if anybody wants to grab it, leads to a story map that basically contains all of the same initiatives and collaborative programs that are mentioned in this presentation, and also include the topics from last July. Okay. TCARTA has been working with NLA of Jamaica since before April 2021. And this timeline here helps to provide a sense of the evolution of the collaboration. And I think that it could serve as an indication for other hydrographic offices. I'm not sure if 2 years seems like a lot or a little to you, but quite a lot has developed over these 2 years. TCARTA have been fortunate to be included as collaborators with the NLA in reaching this point where now satellite-derived bathymetry is a part of the solution for the nation's bathymetry goals. TCARTA has learned a great deal from this collaboration regarding the pain points a hydrographic office faces, which I've heard some discussion on this morning, faces in meeting its requirements. We've also learned a lot about the importance of the ingenuity and the motivation of its people and the hurdles that SDB technology needs to overcome to be integrated. As reported last July, our initial collaborative project took place in Bowdoin Harbor, Jamaica, with single beam and SDB integration. A key point to make again here was that despite the fact that the project didn't go as planned, there remained a commitment on both sides to understand the potential of such an integration going forward, to share that out to the community, as was reflected in this article that we jointly authored and was published in the Hydro International magazine. This commitment ultimately led to a deeper dive this year and a mutual technology exchange this spring when a multi-beam and SDB integration project was conducted in Port Antonio. For the first portion of the program, TCARTA got schooled in collecting multi-beam, including all the logistical details, challenges, and some shallow water obstacles. Both organizations pressed hard for this to be an all-source integration. NLA led efforts day and night to collect multi-beam and UAV data of the port of the highest quality and coverage. Imagery collection is a place where industry partners like TCARTA can really shine. We can leverage our experience and relationships with suppliers to benefit these collaborative projects. In this particular instance, TCARTA coordinated collection from 4 individual sensors over Port Antonio. Able to bring this multi-source back to the classroom, or in this case, the computer lab at NLA, where TCARTA had an exciting few days to dive deep with a team of hydrographers and geospatial analysts on the topic of SDB, with subtopics from imagery assessment to multi-beam and UAV integration and data evaluation and ultimately data management. This collaboration has benefited from the leadership of Diego Billings, Senior Hydrographic Surveyor at NLA. As we all know, we were just listening to him talk. Diego is a MAC seabed coordinator and JEBCO alum. And I just want to I think I'm going fast enough that I have time for a story. I got to talk with Diego in person at the IHO Third Assembly, and he was telling me about this proposal that is here that we contributed some materials to. And I said something to Diego like, have you always been a big thinker? Have you always had these big ideas? He said, oh yeah. Just kind of a quick answer. And I think that just speaking to the importance of the people involved in these organizations, that yes, we're all parts of organizations and agencies that have visions and missions, but people are so important too. And being inspired and understanding the worthwhile nature of our work can really propel us forward at times. And also collaboration, obviously. So this proposal has been submitted to map the entirety of Jamaica's waters, including using SDB, and also includes SDB capacity building and production among JEBCO alums. Here's just a summary of the challenges and successes of this program thus far, and most exciting, the next steps. TCARTA benefits from this work in tangible ways. Our company culture is to be involved in meaningful and productive business relationships, and being part of moving the needle on global participation in Seabed 2030 has been a thrill for us as a team. We're looking forward to these next steps listed here. I'm switching gears here to a couple of really exciting academic partnerships that TCARD has been involved in. First, with the Marine Institute at Memorial University of Newfoundland, who's nearing the completion of their Cat A certification of their hydrographic program, and also with the University of Southern Mississippi, which is a Cat A program in the United States. I heard talk earlier about really connecting with younger people and harnessing the enthusiasm and the interest in the profession. And I want to just emphasize here that this slide shows that we started small. We started just by providing software seats into a singular classroom, talking with a singular professor, and the interest in learning new technologies and tools has its own momentum. And both of these partnerships have taken on a life of their own and have multiple avenues going forward. There's a web of potential here at the Marine Institute, and I've been working on this myself quite a lot lately. There is an eagerness for technology integrations and relevant work, student interest in these summer internship program, and also we have an internship program that will go through the school year where students will be learning to integrate data sets and produce SDB. Student interest exceeded our capacity. And in interviewing 8 undergrad students, they taught me that they are switched on regarding CBED 2030, GIS, the importance of data management, and they are eager for work experience. In having discussions with multiple instructors at the school, I've been taught that they are interested in authentic industry partnership. They're looking for real world skills for their students and relevant outcomes of the effort. Again, here with the University of Southern Mississippi, student interest exceeded our capacity, and this spring's offering is envisioned as the first of many. What started as a conversation among professors and division heads has turned into a standard STB training offering at the Center for Higher Learning on Stennis, and the integration of TCARDA's STB software in USM's remote sensing curriculum, with TCARDA providing materials, instruction, and consultation. The takeaways, there's a lot of momentum and excitement around the integration of SDB with other technologies, the taking on of new toolboxes, and in specific, a lot of enthusiasm and momentum around pointing these technologies towards worthwhile efforts such as CBED 2030. Thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to present TCARDA's work to you.
Well, thank you so much, Corey. Of course, we're always really excited to hear from TCARDA and all their exciting projects. Up next is our own Dr. Vicki Farini to talk about GMRT Tyler and Girl Talk. So Vicki, if we can get the screen back from you, there we go. Yep. Vicki, you can take it away.
Okay, so I'm going to do a brief overview of GMRT for folks who might be unfamiliar with it at this point, global multi-resolution topography. And really focus on the work we've been doing to make the tools that we use in-house distributable broadly so that we can sort of work toward a common standard to make sure that data that we process can integrate more seamlessly and be as efficient as possible with effort. So just as an intro to GMRT, it is first and foremost a multi-resolution topography synthesis of both land and ocean elevations. We have our own homegrown tiling scheme that efficiently stores and delivers its content. We maintain it simultaneously through projections. It's also an infrastructure for delivering elevation data as grids, images, profiles, points, whatever the user wants, really trying to serve high resolution detailed focus needs rather than a global single grid or product. We provide full attribution and access to data sources. And the bit that I'm going to try to focus on today is the scalable methodology for doing the QA/QC of multi-beam sonar data, and really highlight how well suited this is for working with data acquired during transits which hopefully will help encourage more transit data acquisition so that we can leverage every opportunity that we have to collect more and more data. There we go. So just a few simple slides about the synthesis. I think I already covered all of this. There are various interfaces and ways to access it. Lots of metadata that we maintain, including the ship, the chief scientist, the multi-beam sonar system that was used. Really trying to make sure that this data compilation is accessible broadly to users to meet their specific needs, regardless of their expertise. Harkening back to one of Juliette's points earlier, comprehensive metadata and attribution has always been at the forefront of the work that we do here at Lamont in terms of data stewardship. And so the metadata that we curate is very detailed, and we are very fortunate, again, to work here in the US, where the US academic fleet is collecting and making available lots of data. And we are very focused on getting that processed and integrated as quickly as possible. You can access GeoMRT through a web application, web services that drive that web application, and also GeoMap, which is a desktop application. There will be a presentation, a lightning talk this afternoon that focuses a little bit more on some of GeoMap's bathymetry specific functionality. Just briefly, the pieces of GeoMRT, this is a slide I like to use to simplify the different content components. We use the Jevco grid, that should actually be 2022, sorry for that. So that's the base map for the ocean. We have land topography, land elevation data that varies in resolution from 10 to 30 meters, depending on the portion of the ocean that it is. We have contributed grids that are typically, coherent surveys that are conducted. Those come to us in raster format. And then there's the multi-beam synthesis that we curate, which is where most of our curatorial effort is focused. And many of the team that do that data processing are sitting in the room today, so it's great to have them here. And these pieces all get brought together on the fly to generate the elevation products that users request. Most of our effort, again, goes into processing the multi-beam data. We have data as old as, I think, the 80s, maybe even earlier, and we work with modern data as well. Yes, we'd love to be able to do this programmatically, automatically. It's not so possible. A lot of the data that we work with is transit data acquired with the US academic fleet, which is hugely valuable. And the tools that we've developed and refined over the years really help us to pinpoint problems when we don't have overlapping coverage. So if there's just a single track line, you can't necessarily tell if it's going to integrate well with adjacent data because there is none. So we have tools to focus in on problems and also to allow us to compare data from individual crews with the synthesis itself to try to identify and address problems. So we do things, of course, including ping editing and cleaning outliers, but we also spend a lot of time doing sound speed corrections. Again, trying to encourage the community, the global community, certainly the US community, to turn on the multi-beams. Even if you can't collect sound speed profiles in the field, we can fix it in post-processing. It's better to turn it on and get us the data. Even if nobody's watching it, we can still do magic with it. It's better than no data. So just another shout out for that, and the tools of the multi-beam advisory committee may help to complement what we're doing in post-processing as well. Just some metrics about the multi-beam content in GeoMRT, which does get passed to CBED 2030 and is integrated into the Jevco grid. With our last release that came out in March, we were covering almost 11% of the global ocean with roughly 100-meter resolution. This is data from over 1,400 cruises that we've either processed ourselves or reviewed data processed by others. That's one of the adjustments that we made in the past few years, that we can take process files that are NB system compatible. So it could be that the processing is done in Chimera or Keras or something else. And as long as we have a GSF format, a generic sonar format, we can consume those, run them through our algorithms, and generate our tile raster and integrate the data. One of the points I like to make here with this slide is the number of operators, the number of ships, the number of chief scientists involved in collecting these data. So we have a very broad perspective on the variable practices over many years of data acquisition. And the tools that we've developed really help us to make the best product that we can with these data. Really trying to use as much of it as possible. Of course, there are growing volumes of data at the IHO DCTV. Here in the US, the role of the Rolling Edge Repository Program has really accelerated the availability of data. We have not been able to keep pace. This plot is a little outdated, but shows in blue what we've been able to put into GMRT compared with what has been made publicly available. And we recognized several years ago, right around the beginning of CBET 2030, that we couldn't keep pace with our small team. So we had to shift things around a little bit so that we could enable the broader community to work with us to process and integrate these data to a common standard. So this chart that I use a lot is pretty complicated, but it's really meant to indicate the overall workflow of the data comes from the ship. It goes, the raw format goes into the DCTV, the multi-beam archive that the world had access to. Historically, we would access as the team here, the raw data and do the processing ourselves. In some cases, operations teams do that processing at sea or even shoreside, or scientists do that processing. But what we build now, we can consume any process, swap data, push it through our process, vet it, make sure it's of adequate quality, and then get that integrated into GMRT, which becomes publicly available in all formats I described earlier, and then pass that on to CBET 2030, and also make those process swap files available. Again, trying to minimize redundancy of effort. If all the raw data is in the same archive and we all go access it independently, we're all going to potentially process the same data file, and that's a pretty silly use of time and resources. So we're trying to build into the system and into the processes a way to make that inefficiency minimized, right? So the vision is a distributed and coordinated community that works together nationally, locally, regionally, to create the high quality bathymetric data products that we need. Again, really recognizing that with CBET 2030, with more emphasis on data acquisition and sharing, more raw data is coming in, and we want to encourage that. We don't want people to hold back collecting data because they don't have the resources to process it. We want all the data to come, and we'll work on it. And this is a way to get the tools out there to a broader community and have some consistency. So the tool that we use is called GMRT Tyler. This uses an algorithm that was developed by the great Bill Haxty many years ago. It's been almost 20 years since he passed away. GMRT was really envisioned and first developed through his collaboration with Bill Ryan, who still is here on this campus and is an inspiration and a treasure. But these tools are available on GitHub. There are workflows and code or videos to help people get used to them and adopt them. We've deployed them on physical and virtual machines, including at AWS. They're on personal laptops. And we also have worked with the EV Nautilus to get it fully integrated at sea in their data processing workflow. We're also using these same tools as part of what we're calling our Seafloor Data Apprentice program here at Lamont. So over the past several years, we've brought students in to work with us. Partly, some of them supported by GMRT, some of them supported by CBET 2030. Collectively, we've had over 17 participants over the years. These are the track lines of the data that they have processed or reviewed. Really trying to test out these tools and see how we can use them, particularly with less experienced people, and try to work out the kinks so that we can get these tools out there to the world. This is a picture from last year of the team that we had together. Again, many in the room here, and a list of the folks that have worked with us over the years. We have also had the JEDCO, the Nippon Foundation JEDCO training program students come here and do lab visits and work with us and learn about the tools. Again, trying to iron out the kinks and get this to be more robust. And we are about to this year embark on a new facet of using this tool in what's called the Girl Talk program. This is funded by the Kalita Doolin Foundation. We're really excited. The idea with this is to get these tools out into a different community and really focus our engagements around women in ocean mapping. And so Marie Tharp, who hopefully everyone knows of course, sat here at this institution, and her most famous map is here on the wall beside us. And we want to tell the story of Marie Tharp, have women tell the story of Marie Tharp, have women talk about what we do in the realm of ocean mapping, why we do it, how we do it. We're going to do this with virtual panels. We're going to have Q&As, and then we're going to have an in-person data workshop for hopefully 30 diverse young women from the region here in the New York City area. They're going to come together, use these tools, process data, get data prepared to go into these integrated global maps. They're going to walk home with printed maps, hopefully make story maps that they can show their families. And really just be part of this and get the word out to the younger generation that there's a lot of exciting work to be done in this realm. So key takeaways, the tools that we've been building and refining over the years are freely available and can hopefully increase participation and coordination data processing efforts. Sharing tools, workflows, and knowledge can empower an increasingly diverse community to work with these data and to contribute to the global syntheses that we are building. And that these tools are focused again on integrating and adding value to sparse, for example, transit data, and also to help us establish fit for purpose quality standards. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Vicki. We just have one last presentation from Christy again to close us out, talking about the Jeff Cook book. You're welcome to present. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Christy.
All right, thank you very much. So again, my name is Christy Reiser, and I'm the Bathymetry Data Manager with the IHO Data Center for Digital Bathymetry. In this really short presentation, I'm going to get into more detail about the JEDCO cookbook and what is available to the public for that. So what is the JEDCO cookbook? Some of you may not have ever heard of it. Well, JEDCO aims to provide the most authoritative, publicly available bathymetric data sets for the world's oceans. In order to assist further participation in bathymetric grid development, JEDCO created a technical reference manual. It's called the JEDCO cookbook, also known as the B11 document. And this book basically helps the user build bathymetric grids. A wide variety of topics are included, including data gathering, data cleaning, gridding examples, and software overviews. The cookbook includes input from a number of individuals and organizations, all of whom are experts in their respective fields. So the cookbook was originally released in October of 2012. The last publication was in October of 2019, and it's currently being maintained and made available by me, the new chief editor of this publication, as well as the JEDCO Cookbook Editorial Board. This publication is reviewed and governed by the JEDCO group called TSCOM. It's the Technical Subcommittee on Ocean Mapping, who will be hosting our workshop just in a few hours. And I want to talk about some of the changes that have occurred. So before I came on as editor, the previous editor was Karen Marks, and she worked with NOAA for 31 years and spent 12 of those years dedicating a large chunk of her time towards this documentation. So I came on as chief editor, and during that time was asked by TSCOM to form an editorial board. So now we have 7 members from the JEDCO community who are dedicated with me to updating and maintaining this very important open source document reference manual that's available to the public. Now, since I have stepped in, we made a call for updates to the existing chapters, reaching out to the 40-some authors. So many people contributed to this document, and so we reached out to all of them. And unfortunately, because of the rich history of this document, many of the authors have retired or are no longer available to maintain this publication. So we've been in search of new authors as well. So another thing we've undertaken is moving this 500-page document into a more manageable format, which is now an InDesign. So it used to be a Word document. Now we're using InDesign so that we have a much easier way of making updates in the future. And part of that is also including 508 compliance. I'm not sure if anybody here knows what that is, but 508 compliance is really important. It's an international standard on making documentations more accessible. So if you have any kind of issues where you need to be able to read or play the document, you can do that. There's certain software that takes advantage of that 508 compliance, making it more accessible to the public. So that's really exciting that we're able to move in this direction. And we plan to publish an updated version this year, and it'll include an accompanying DOI for this document. Now, the fabulous authors that have come to the table and updated the chapters that are going to be published soon include this list right here. So we've had ArcGIS revamped. The chapter on terrorist tips, chapter on the IHO DCBD, one on the continuously updated DEM or QDEM, which includes an open access code repository. And this was also used to be 3 separate chapters. So we're trying to make this a little bit more accessible and a little bit more evergreen. We also have an updated chapter on developing a type identifier grid, TID, and we're hoping for new chapters to come in the future. The editorial board and I also plan to make a call for not just new chapters, but new authors to kind of take over those older chapters that have no longer have an author taking care of them. And we plan to identify any of the outdated information and revitalize the new information in that same evergreen way. So many of these chapters are very, very lengthy. We're trying to make it so that while that click-by-click instruction is really important for many of the users of this document, we want to retain as much of that as possible, but also still maybe referencing other resources and texts that are maintained outside of this document. And this will reduce the amount of updating this book needs to go through each year. Software and technology just changed too fast for us, and to make those kind of changes in a reference document like this is just too much. So we're just trying to reframe how the cookbook is handled. And with that, hopefully we'll have a publication out later this year, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Christy. I'm just going to share that last slide that we were on a moment ago. Maybe he's gonna close this up. There we go.
All right, first, thank you to everyone who contributed this morning. I think this has been a great conversation. Certainly not the last, just one of many in the ongoing conversation. Just again to highlight some of at least what our center is trying to pursue as we try to accelerate toward 2030. Really focusing on coordination and collaboration. Again, I think it's really important that we understand the communities that we're trying to engage with and what they need. Those of us that have tools and workflows and knowledge that can be shared, we can get out there in a way that it can be accessed, not push it on people, but make it available and make it easy to use. I think that can help us meet our mutually beneficial goals. I think, we're always trying to develop new collaborations and opportunities, and we heard a few great examples in this session. The work that TCARTA is doing, I think, is very much in line with a lot of these strategic ideas. As we get more information, and as Juliet said earlier, getting polygons of coverage, that's been a focus that we've been pursuing for many years, and the Mesoamerican and Caribbean region in particular has been very engaged in that kind of work with us to help make it better understood where the gaps are. The more we can do that, even if data can't be shared, just understanding that it exists and that maybe there's a negotiation possible is going to help us. And then I think really what we're edging toward, hopefully accelerating toward, is building a community of practice that's global in extent. This Venn diagram in the bottom right is from a paper that Colleen Peters and I, a white paper that she and I put together last year for the National Ocean Exploration Forum that was convened by NOAA. And really focusing on the intersection of data, information, and methodology as the space where knowledge, which is familiarity and understanding, can be achieved. And bringing all of our perspectives and expertise and tools and resources together in a way that we can foster that exchange, I think is going to be the key to moving us forward. I'm optimistic that that's a big piece of it. And so thank you all for your efforts in working in this space and continuing to push things forward. I think with that, we're gonna close out the regional mapping meeting. We're gonna take a bit of a break, so we'll end the YouTube live stream here. We will be initiating our TSOM workshop this afternoon, so in a few hours on the same YouTube channel. And so look forward to engaging in that conversation. Today's session for the workshop will be live stream only. Tomorrow, we'll start to use a combination of live stream and Zoom for engaging remote participants. So I think with that, again, I'll just say thank you and we'll reconvene in a bit. Thanks, Sandy.